I regressed after a system glitch maxed my luck at 9,999. The first metal slime I killed dropped an S-rank greatsword. Then 4 more rare slimes ran straight at me like they had scheduled a delivery. Metal slimes normally fled on sight. Their S-rank drops were nearly impossible. I was Evan Hale, 17 again, standing on the first floor of the Chicago dungeon. My hidden luck-controlled encounters, critical hits, drops, and every other probability check the system could throw at me. That one rule turned 5 impossible monsters into 5 guaranteed rewards. So I grabbed the new sword and charged before the universe could correct its second mistake. Every swing crit. An S-rank breastplate dropped first, gauntlets followed, then boots. The 5th slime coughed up a metal slime shield large enough to stop a charging truck. The nearby adventurers stopped hunting. One archer still had an arrow drawn, but his mouth had given up. Look, I understood the reaction. In my first life, I had spent 70 years hunting regular slimes and received enough trash loot to open a deeply depressing yard sale. Now, rare monsters were sprinting at me like delivery drivers. The loot answered one question. My luck was real. It also opened the question that actually mattered. Could I use it before the same ruined future took my family again? To explain why one sword nearly made me cry, I need to go back to the final hour of my first life. I was still on floor 1, still bronze rank, and Chicago was already dying above me. The adventurer system had one simple promise. Kill monsters, gain levels, raise your stats, and become strong enough to climb. My level rose normally. My base stats stayed frozen. For 70 years, younger adventurers passed me, retired, and sent their children past me too. I became the dungeon's oldest tutorial, NPC, terrible career path. On the last day, monsters overran Chicago. Adventurers stampeded toward the exits. I walked deeper into the slime field. A fleeing swordsman grabbed my shoulder. "Move, old man, the city is finished." I pulled free. Another adventurer saw my bronze badge and laughed. "He's still farming slimes?" His friend shoved me face first into the dirt. "Stay down, you'll slow someone useful." 70 years of work had earned me 1 bronze badge and a stranger's boot. My sword had broken earlier that morning, so I stood, wiped slime off my cheek, and raised my fists. I needed 1 more kill to reach level 99. Maybe max level would finally force the system to notice me. A slime bounced closer. I punched it until my knuckles split. The creature burst, and the level up screen opened. Level 99 achieved. Stat increase, strength +1. 1 point. After 70 years, the system handed me 1 point of strength while the world ended. Man! Even the apocalypse had better comedic timing. My mother had died waiting for treatment. My little sister had worked herself into a future I could never protect her from. The system waited until level 99 to spit in my face. The dungeon shook. A pack of high-level beasts crashed through the passage behind the fleeing adventurers. Their leader wore bone armor and dragged a blade wider than my body. The men who mocked me vanished around the corner. I had no weapon or route out, so I stepped in front of the monsters anyway. I refused to die on my knees after wasting 70 years there. The first beast broke my ribs, the second drove me into the stone. The bone-armored leader raised its sword, and my last thought was painfully simple. I had failed my family and lived long enough to watch everything fall apart. The blade came down. Then the darkness filled with system text. Critical status error detected. Growth parameter corrupted. Lifetime compensation calculation complete. The defective machine had finally checked my account after killing the customer. Regression authorized. Return point, initial adventurer registration. The ruined dungeon vanished. I woke inside the Adventurers Guild 70 years earlier. My hands were young. My ribs were whole. White hair hung over my eyes again. A clerk pushed a registration card toward me. "Evan Hale? Place your hand on the scanner." I remembered leaving this counter with the weakest numbers in the room. This time the scanner flashed red. Error compensation, 9,999 bonus points awarded. A stat I had never seen appeared beneath the others. Luck, 9,999. The clerk leaned around the screen. "Is something wrong?" I covered the hidden panel with my palm. "The system and I are settling an old billing issue." She stared at me. The stat was real. I left the guild and went straight to floor 1. The Chicago dungeon's first floor looked exactly as I remembered. Wet stone, green slimes, rookie adventurers chasing anything slow enough to stab. Then I spotted silver light between 2 pillars. A metal slime. In my first life, I had seen that same creature on registration day. I had stalked it for 20 minutes before it escaped. The memory still annoyed me 70 years later. I had stayed mad at one slime for an entire lifetime. I lowered my body and approached with my cheap starter sword. A careless archer noticed the slime from across the room. He loosed an arrow before getting close enough to aim properly. The arrow struck the wall. The metal slime jumped. Every experienced adventurer nearby expected it to flee. Instead, it turned and charged me. The archer shouted, "Move! It's coming through!" I planted one foot and swung. The slime hit my blade at full speed. My sword snapped in half. For one ugly second, the broken handle was all I had. Then the metal slime split open. Critical hit. Level increase, +4. A black and silver greatsword materialized where the creature had died. S-rank metal. Slime greatsword acquired. The archer lowered his bow. That thing dropped what? I picked up the greatsword. The weapon was heavier than my entire starter kit, but my new levels let me drag it into position. Before the archer could demand a share, 4 silver shapes bounced out of the next passage. All 4 turned toward me. The archer whispered, "Metal slimes don't hunt people." Apparently mine came with customer service. I charged. One critical hit dropped an S-rank breastplate. The next slime coughed up gauntlets, another produced boots, and the last one left a shield big enough to hide behind. My starter sword had lasted 1 kill. Its replacement was already worth more than everything my family had owned in my first life. I stayed on floor 1 until 10 metal slimes had thrown themselves into my path. Spare weapons followed. So did high-rank armor and multiple chaos staffs with random spell tables. One rookie had become a walking guild scandal before lunch. A system notice joined the pile. Skill acquired. Bee Sting. The skill locked a projectile onto a chosen target. I filed it away. Perfect luck was handing me tools faster than I could test them. By noon, the careless archer had stopped pretending to hunt. He followed me to the guild because one impossible drop might be a lie. 10 were harder to explain. The guild appraiser verified rare equipment before it entered the market. She inspected my greatsword and frowned. "Floor 1 doesn't produce this grade," the appraiser told me. "Where did you get it?" I placed the breastplate beside the sword. Her frown vanished. The gauntlets, boots, shield, and 2 spare chaos staffs followed. She triggered an identification seal on one staff and nearly dropped it when the S-rank result appeared. The archer quietly backed away from the counter. Smart man. He had arrived ready to dispute 1 drop. I had brought an inventory avalanche. The appraiser bought enough gear to fund immediate treatment and arranged buyers for the rest. I kept the greatsword, shield, armor, and several chaos staff copies. Strong spells could crack an overloaded staff, and I had already learned the value of backups. The money mattered. The family waiting at home mattered more. I ran from the guild to our old apartment that afternoon. I recognized every block from the life I had lost. Mia Hale opened the door before I finished knocking. She was my younger sister, alive again, wearing the same oversized sweatshirt I remembered from registration day. Mia blinked at my armor. "Why do you look like you robbed a boss monster?" I hugged her. She stiffened. "Evan?" I held on until my hands started shaking. Mia pushed back enough to see my face. "You were gone for 1 morning. For you," I told her. "I know." She studied me, worried now. I couldn't explain 70 years, her funeral, or how many times I had wished for this doorway, so I gave her the promise I could keep. "I won't lose you again." Mia's expression softened. Then she tapped my new breastplate. "Great. Start by avoiding whatever stabbed your fashion sense." There she was. I laughed once, grabbed her hand, and told her we were going to the hospital. That evening, we reached Linda Hale's room. Mom looked smaller than I remembered. Her illness had already weakened her breathing, and every treatment bill forced Mia to pick up more work. Mom saw the potion bottle in my hand and shook her head. "Evan, you can't spend everything on me." "I already spent 70 years being cheap," I told her. "Drink it." She did. The advanced healing potion glowed as it moved through her body. The tight rasp in her chest eased. Color returned to her face. Mia grabbed the bedrail so hard her knuckles whitened. Mom took 1 full breath, then another. A doctor checked the monitor and cleared her for rehabilitation at home. For several minutes, the 3 of us had our family back. Then the doctor gave us the limit. The potion had stabilized Mom, but the illness would return. Permanent recovery required a legendary elixir that ordinary markets could not sell. Mia looked at me. "Where does something like that drop?" "The famous route is around floor 50, I told her. "But an ancient statue on floor 20 has a tiny chance." Mia's eyes moved to my silver-black armor. "Can you survive floor 20? My current guild rank could not even enter it. My base stats still lagged behind my equipment. The permanent cure sat 13 floors beyond my legal access. But tiny chances had become my specialty. "I'll get strong enough," I told her. "And if it becomes impossible, I'll retreat." Mia heard the promise. I already knew I would not retreat while Mom was dying. Mom's borrowed time had started counting down. Floor 20 held the only permanent cure I knew. Luck could force the drop. But first I had to survive the boss. The next morning, I entered floor 5 because Mom's potion had bought time, not a cure. My problem was embarrassing. I owned S-rank armor, but my base stats were too weak to wear most of it without moving like a refrigerator. 70 years of broken growth had followed me backward. Luck gave me absurd equipment. It did not magically supply the strength needed to lift all of it, so I went hunting for miracle fruit. Tree demons hid among the real trees on floor 5. Their bark copied every scratch and patch of moss. Their shadows still leaned away from the dungeon lamps. I walked past the first fake tree and waited. A branch snapped from my neck. I ducked, hooked it with my backup blade, and cut through the trunk. A red fruit dropped into the moss. Miracle fruit acquired. Effect, +1 random base stat. Most adventurers hunted for weeks to see one. I ate it and gained endurance. The next demon copied a healthy oak, but its roots pointed at me like toes. I stabbed first. Another fruit hit the ground before the body finished falling. A third demon tried hiding behind 2 real trees. I let its branch commit, stepped inside the swing, and cut the core before it could pull back. The third fruit rolled against my boot. After that, the pattern became unfair. Every tree demon I exposed dropped another fruit. Strength came bitter. Agility came sour. Magic still tasted like a battery. I kept eating because each point moved the S-rank set from expensive decoration toward usable armor. That was enough proof. I baited branches, cut exposed cores, and turned the forest into my personal stat orchard. Strength rose. Agility followed. Magic tasted like I had licked a battery. Endurance finally stopped the S-rank breastplate from crushing my shoulders. A nearby party watched me finish the 6th fruit. Their scout lowered his harvesting knife. "How many did you buy?" I didn't. The whole party looked at the dead tree demons around me. Their leader packed his knife away. Smart. He had just watched the orchard choose a new owner. By late afternoon, every base stat had reached an average warrior's range. I was still below a veteran, but my equipment had stopped treating me like an underqualified coat rack. Look, I had spent 70 years losing arguments to slimes. Watching my stats rise after breakfast felt deeply disrespectful to the old me. A level up notification also gave me great layering strike. The skill stacked force into one swing, but it activated only 30% of the time. 30% sounded unreliable. For me, it sounded scheduled. By sunset, I could wear the metal slime breastplate, gauntlets, boots, and shield without dragging my feet. The full set changed how other adventurers looked at me. That attention became a problem before I reached the exit. 2 men stepped from behind a fallen trunk. Neither wore a guild badge. Dungeon criminals called themselves wanderers because armed robber hiding underground lacked branding. The taller one carried a narrow sword. His partner held a fire wand and kept staring at my armor. The tall wanderer stepped on the basket holding my last miracle fruit. The fruit burst under his boot. He had not even asked for the fruit. He crushed it because he wanted me angry and careless. The mage wanderer circled behind me and blocked the return path. His wand stayed aimed at my spine while his partner handled the talking. The tall wanderer touched his blade to my new silver-black breastplate. "Leave the equipment and walk away." I rested the greatsword on my shoulder. "You brought 2 people to rob a full S-rank set?" The mage wanderer grinned. "You're a rookie wearing money. We brought 1 extra." I rested the greatsword on my shoulder and let him finish talking. The tall wanderer drew his sword. "Last chance!" The mage raised his wand toward my face. "Take off the armor slowly. Run, and I burn your legs." By then they had destroyed my last fruit, sealed my exit, and threatened to burn my legs. I had heard enough. "I'll keep the armor," I told the tall one. "You can keep the warning." He lunged. His skill was Bee Sting, the same target lock attack I had gained from the metal slimes. Once selected, the blade's path bent toward the target. The tall wanderer announced it like he had already won. Guaranteed hit. My armor carried a probability trait. A successful check reduced incoming damage to almost nothing. His blade struck my chest. The metal rang. I slid half a step, but the edge failed to pierce. The tall wanderer's smile disappeared. He stabbed again. The second hit slid off my shoulder plate. The third bounced from my gauntlet. He changed angles and drove Bee Sting toward the gap under my arm. The target lock curve was clean. My armor trait triggered again, and the blade skidded across the metal instead of entering flesh. His guaranteed skill kept arriving. My defense kept winning the probability check. The mage stopped smiling. The tall wanderer backed away. "What kind of armor does that?" "The expensive kind." I swung Great Layering Strike. He saw the wind-up and laughed. "That skill fails 7 times out of 10. The activation notice flashed. Great Layering Strike. Success. The greatsword hit his guard and folded him into the dirt. His weapon flew into a tree. The impact cracked the ground beneath his shoulder and he stayed down. 1 guaranteed attack had failed to matter. My 30% attack landed on the first attempt. Beautiful. The man had explained the joke before becoming the punchline. The mage wanderer stopped smiling and raised his wand. Fire gathered around the tip. He pointed at the chaos staff strapped across my back. "That junk weapon rolls random spells. Half the time it does nothing." I drew one of my spare staffs. The weapon could produce a weak spark, a basic spell, a temporary buff, or a rare advanced spell. The advanced result had a 1% chance. The mage spread his arms. "Go ahead, gamble." He launched a fireball. I pointed the staff. For 1 second, nothing happened. The mage laughed and fed more power into his spell. His fireball doubled in size as it crossed half the clearing. He had stopped demanding the armor, now he was trying to leave no witness. Then the Chaos Staff screamed. Advanced fire spell activated. A wall of white fire swallowed his attack and kept going. The mage threw himself sideways. The blast scorched his coat, shattered his wand, and carved a smoking trench behind him. He crawled toward the tall wanderer's sword. I planted the greatsword between his hand and the weapon. The point sank into the dirt. His fingers stopped an inch away. My Chaos Staff cracked from the overload. The mage stared at the broken weapon, then at the trench. He whispered, 1%. Good thing I packed backups. I pulled a second Chaos Staff from inventory. The mage folded immediately. Hands up, knees down. Whole criminal career speedrunning its final chapter. I tied both wanderers with their own belts and stored their weapons. The tall one woke while I dragged them toward the exit. He groaned. You can't move two people like luggage. The system inventory rules disagreed. Unconscious bodies slid across the dungeon floor with almost no resistance. I looked back at him. Congratulations, you're a game mechanic now. He stopped talking. An hour later, I delivered both men to police outside the Adventurers Guild. The officers only took custody. The fight was already over. The guild receptionist scanned their faces and went pale. Those two are Red Fang, she told me. They've been robbing and killing adventurers across the lower floors. She placed 2 wanted notices on the counter. The men in the drawings matched my new luggage. Their capture carried enough guild contribution to promote me from bronze to silver. The receptionist removed my old badge and set a silver one in front of me. 2 adventurers waiting for assignments saw the exchange. One checked my face, then the wanted notices, then quietly moved aside when I approached the board. That little piece of metal changed my entire route. Bronze rank stopped around floor 10. Silver rank could legally enter as deep as floor 30. Floor 20 had just moved from impossible access to an available target. The tall wanderer saw the badge change and cursed under his breath. He had tried to steal my equipment and accidentally unlocked my mother's cure route. Wrong rookie. Expensive mistake. Before police led them away, an elderly man entered the guild clutching 1 wanted notice. He looked at the tall wanderer, then at me. The man's voice shook. My son was in their last group. The room went quiet. The wanted notice shook in his hands. The tall wanderer looked away. The elderly father bowed his head. Thank you for bringing them back alive. I wanted them to hear the charges. For most of my first life, strangers had looked through me. This man looked directly at me because something I did had returned a piece of justice to him. I had no clever answer. So I held his shoulder and promised the 2 men would reach the cell waiting for them. The police van carried the criminals away. The silver badge stayed in my hand. For 1 dangerous minute, I saw Chicago burning again while monsters poured from the dungeon. Perfect luck might give me a path to stop that future too. Mom's temporary cure had a deadline. Saving the world meant nothing if I abandoned my family to do it, so I chose floor 21st. That choice solved my access problem. It also put my name on Red Fang's problem list. 2 of their men had lost their weapons, freedom, and reputation to a silver rookie. Red Fang could not ignore that public humiliation. I left the guild with my new badge and started preparing for floor 15. A gang built on fear would come looking for the rookie who had turned 2 predators into luggage. The only question was how. Several days after the Red Fang arrests, I moved to floor 15 because silver rank had opened the route toward Mom's cure. Red Fang moved too. I did not witness their meeting. The guild reconstructed it afterward from captured traffickers, repellent drums, and the damage left across the floor. A bald Red Fang superior had blamed me for the arrests. He followed my route for days looking for a clean ambush. He never found one. So the discount rogue stopped trying to fight me and decided to weaponize the ecosystem. He removed the predators that ate death locusts. He fed the insect nests. Then he laid repellent through side passages until the growing swarm had 1 comfortable direction left. Mine. That was the plan I learned later. At the time, I only knew floor 15 felt wrong. The metal slimes had become scarce, so I spent several days hunting heavier monsters for levels and rare drops. Luck still paid. Weapons filled my inventory. Armor piled up. Another Chaos Staff joined the backups, but the local predators had vanished. Broken shells covered the ground. Sweet feed had been scattered near insect burrows. A chemical smell clung to passages that should have smelled like wet dirt. I had no danger detection skill yet. I had old memories, a silver badge, and the growing feeling that someone had changed the floor around me. Then, the light disappeared. I looked up. The cavern ceiling had turned black. Millions of death locusts poured from the upper tunnels. Each insect was the size of my forearm, and their jaws could strip armor leather in seconds. The swarm filled every route behind me. 1 floor-wide disaster had been aimed at 1 man. Red Fang had finally stopped being subtle. I ran toward Triangle Outpost, the fortified shelter that had existed here in my first life. The outpost had thick gates, trained guards, and enough narrow walls to survive a swarm. There was one problem. I had arrived decades before anyone built it. The marked location held a bare mountain face. Look, future knowledge is wonderful until the future forgets to install the building. The locust cloud rolled closer. I searched the stone and found a draft leaking through one crack. Someone had sealed a cavern behind the wall. I drove the metal slime greatsword into the crack and split the entrance wide enough to enter. Inside, I found crude mine braces, stacked powder kegs, and blasting charges left from an expansion project. I marked the explosives immediately. Anything that could crack a mountain might buy us a way out. Then, I saw the people. Dozens of adventurers sat bound along the cavern walls. Their armor had been stripped. Their weapons were gone. Several were injured. A blonde warrior still had rope burns around both wrists. The future outpost was currently a trafficker hideout. The blonde warrior lifted his bound wrists. The wall had been sealed to keep prisoners in. I cut the first rope. A female mage glared at my armor. Red Fang send you? I cut her ropes. Red Fang currently hates me. The blonde warrior rubbed his wrists. Then open the exit. The exit has a locust army behind it. Nobody moved. I freed the rest and learned the wanderers had planned to sell them to deeper floor crews. Their captors had fled through a hidden tunnel when the swarm began, leaving the prisoners tied up as insect food. Their captors had called it a practical retreat. They had left bound people as insect bait. The cavern shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The female mage looked at the broken entrance. We have no weapons. I do. I opened my inventory. Swords, shields, armor, bows, staffs, and spare equipment materialized across the cave floor. Rare metal flashed under the torchlight. The prisoners stared at the pile. One man reached for the most expensive breastplate. The female mage grabbed the same piece. It fits a caster build, she snapped. You don't cast with your chest, the man shot back. We had an insect apocalypse outside, and these two had already started premium loot shopping. I slammed the greatsword into the ground. Armor goes by battle roll, I told them. Shield users take the front, ranged fighters take the back. Anyone arguing gets the wooden club. The man released the breastplate. The female mage picked up a staff instead. Command established. Very advanced leadership technique. I assigned weapons, placed shields at the cave mouth, and gave the fastest adventurers the remaining rope and explosives. The blonde warrior tightened a borrowed shield strap. Why give this away? Because dead equipment has terrible resale value. He looked at the approaching swarm, then nodded. Your orders, then! The others followed. I had entered looking for a shelter and accidentally founded a militia. The first wave struck the cave mouth seconds later. Shields locked across the narrow entrance. Spears stabbed through the gaps while mages burned the insects packed behind them. Archers cleared anything climbing the walls. The choke point worked for one brutal cycle. Locust bodies slowed the next wave, and the rescued adventurers started moving like a unit instead of prisoners. The blonde warrior caught the first heavy locust on his shield. The female mage burned the three packed behind it, and an archer finished the one crawling over the ceiling. Nobody waited for me to repeat the order. That was the first moment the gear pile became an actual fighting line. A second wave hit harder. One shield cracked. Two strangers switched places without arguing, dragged the wounded holder back, and kept the gap closed. The swarm had given us a team because it planned to eat everyone equally. Then clicking crawled through the left wall. Cracks spread across the ceiling braces, and the floor buckled under the mages as locusts chewed through the mountain. The ceiling dropped. Stones smashed the shield line apart. One swarm burst through the wall while another erupted behind us from the floor. Our working plan died in one breath. The blonde warrior knocked an insect off the female mage. She burned another from his shoulder. The equipment had bought us time. Now the cavern had teeth on every side. I looked at the powder kegs near the mine braces. The system identified the old charges. Chain detonation chance, 25%. I grinned. 25% was plenty. I split the survivors into two teams. One gathered powder and charges from the side tunnels. The other held the locusts away from the cliff passage behind the cavern. I pointed each team toward a side tunnel, and they moved before the next wave hit. The defense dragged on for hours. Our first line lost shields. Our second line lost room. The mages burned through most of their mana. One injured adventurer fell. Two others carried him while still stabbing behind them. The villain's plan had landed. We were exhausted, bleeding, and being pushed toward open air. At the cliff edge, I arranged the remaining charges across the narrow rock shelf. Below us was a drop deep enough to kill anything that fell cleanly. The swarm filled the passage. I handed the trigger cord to the blonde warrior. He looked from the cord to me. What are you doing? Giving them one target. The female mage grabbed my arm. You'll be standing on the charges, only until they activate. That is a terrible sentence. She had a point. I ordered everyone through the side path leading away from the shelf. Several refused until I threatened to take back the equipment they were wearing. Petty threats save lives too. The blonde warrior backed toward the tunnel. Come after us, I plan to. Then I stepped onto the cliff shelf alone. The locusts changed direction. One living target stood closer than the fleeing group. They poured toward me. I waited until the front insects covered the charges. Then I cut the trigger cord with my sword. Chain detonation activated. The 25% chain fired perfectly. Every charge detonated. The cliff broke beneath us. Fire swallowed the front wave. Stone collapsed through the swarm. Thousands of locusts fell into the ravine with me. The explosion solved the army. Gravity immediately sent me the bill. I landed on one falling slab, jumped to another, and cut through a locust that survived the blast. A third slab spun beneath my boots. The last insect flew toward my face. I swung midair and split it. Death locust swarm exterminated. The notification appeared while I was still falling, which felt rude. I jumped from the final slab toward the broken ledge. My fingers missed. For 1 second, the ravine opened below me. Then a rope snapped tight around my forearm. The blonde warrior lay flat on the ledge, both hands locked around the line. The former skeptic had tied the other end around his waist. "Pull!" he shouted. The rescued adventurers crowded behind him. The female mage wrapped the rope around her staff and leaned back. Shield users anchored the line. Injured fighters joined with one hand. I had ordered them to leave. They refused to leave me. The rope mattered more than the title that came next. They dragged me over the edge while loose stone fell past my boots. The blonde warrior did not release my arm until I was fully on the ground. Then he punched my shoulder. "That was your plan? It worked. You fell off a mountain. Temporary complication." He stared at me for 3 seconds, then laughed like a man who had survived too much to stay angry. The final count showed 0 deaths among the rescued adventurers. The system awarded levels, stat gains, and a new title. Titles acquired, Exterminator. Skill acquired, Warrior's Instinct. The skill normally failed most danger checks. With my luck, it warned me whenever a threat entered range. It was an alarm. I still had to identify the threat myself. When we returned to the guild, the rescued adventurers told everyone what happened. Party offers followed. Reporters crowded the entrance. The blonde warrior told 3 groups I had blown up a cliff. Each time he added that I had badly understated the falling part. Later, the guild matched the repellent, feed, and trafficker testimony to one Red Fang superior. His name was Cal Knox. The locust stunt had failed to kill me. It had given me levels, a danger skill, public fame, and people willing to throw me a rope. Cal tried to erase one silver rookie and accidentally advertised me across the guild. I still declined the party offers. Shared loot made my luck harder to control, and Mom's floor 20 deadline came first. But I stopped pretending the rescue had been a solo win. I thought the locust stunt was Red Fang's worst idea. Their next move would follow me into the room holding my mother's cure. That night, Mom ate dinner at our apartment instead of through a hospital tray. Linda Hale could walk again, but the advanced potion was already losing strength. Mia kept watching her between bites, pretending she was not counting every breath. I was counting too. Mom tried to serve me another piece of chicken. Her hand shook once before the plate reached mine. Mia saw it too. She took the serving spoon without comment and finished the job. The potion had returned our dinner table. Our time was still running out. Mia pointed her fork at me. Floor 20 recommends a party of 4. I've survived worse recommendations. You blew up a cliff and fell off it. Temporary complication. Mom set her cup down. Evan, promise you'll retreat if the boss is too much. The joking stopped there. I promised. Mom heard a son trying to calm her. Mia heard the same thing. I heard the elixir's drop rate ticking against the potion in Mom's body. The next morning, I entered floor 20 alone because shared loot could interfere with my luck. My silver badge opened the route, and Warrior's Instinct started warning me before I reached the boss corridor. The skill only detected danger. It did not identify the source. Every time I stopped, the warning stopped too. Someone was following at the edge of its range. I turned twice and found empty stone. On the third turn, a loose chain swung beside a wall nobody had touched. Good. If Cal Knox wanted another try, he had finally stopped hiding behind insects. The Red Fang superior had already used a whole floor to kill me. A hidden tail on the route to my mother's cure fit his style. I kept walking. Calling out the tail in the hallway would only make him retreat. I needed him committed somewhere he could not run. Floor 20 tried to slow me first. Wooden puppets dropped from ceiling rails and swung rusted blades. I cut through the strings, crushed their cores, and kept moving. A stone guardian blocked the sealed boss door. It raised both arms, and the floor cracked under its weight. 3 more puppets dropped behind me. I pinned one to the wall with bee sting, used its body to block the second, and cut the third through both elbows. The stone guardian charged while I was still inside the wreckage. I caught its first arm on the shield, stepped across its stance, and let its own weight carry it into the wall. The impact exposed the neck joint. I stepped inside the first punch, drove bee sting through the joint behind its knee, then removed its head with the metal slime greatsword. The guardian collapsed across the doorway. Warrior's instinct pulsed again behind me. Whoever followed had watched the entire fight without helping. Very generous. Truly a gentleman. I opened the boss room. The enchanted golem inside stood twice my height. Stone plates covered its core, and each plate rotated after an attack. A normal party needed 4 people because the boss punished anyone who stayed in front too long. My plan was simpler. Break 1 plate, move before the counter, repeat until the core showed. The golem brought both fists down. I rolled beneath the shockwave and split the plate over its left knee. The boss turned. I moved to its blind side and broke the plate under one arm. 2 clean exchanges. The cure was finally one boss away. Then the sealed door opened behind me. A boot crossed the threshold. The room flashed red. Second participant detected. A second enchanted golem rose from the floor. Its first roar changed the room. Stone panels slid apart. New traps surfaced between the pillars. One circular section of floor sank under its own rubble, pulling broken pieces downward with unnatural force. The recommended fight had gone from 4 people against 1 boss to me against 2 bosses and 1 invisible idiot. The door sealed again. A poison knife cut through the joint in my shoulder. Heat spread down my arm before I ripped it free. Caltrops scattered under my next step. I jumped, and an electrified wire snapped up at chest height. The metal slime shield caught it, but blue current numbed my left hand. A golem's fist tore the wire from the wall. Its partner charged through a cracked gas canister and forced me across the green cloud with its shoulder. I held my breath, landed badly, and took a thrown blade across the thigh. Cal's traps had failed to finish me. They had still poisoned 1 arm, weakened 1 leg, and placed me between both bosses. The discount rogue had finally earned some confidence. Another knife flashed from empty air. I turned enough to save my throat, but the blade scored the side of my neck. The nearest golem swung at the shimmer and missed Cal by inches. He was using every failed trap to make the boss's attack through me. A second gas canister rolled beneath my shield. I kicked it toward the charging golem. Its foot crushed the metal, and the burst forced both of us into the same narrow lane. Cal had stopped throwing random toys. He was building my next position, 1 wound at a time. Warrior's instinct flashed at my right side. I swung before I saw anything. Steel hit steel. A man-shaped shimmer appeared behind the sparks. I drove my shoulder forward. The shimmer jumped away, and an invisibility cloak flickered around a bald head. Cal Knox landed beside a broken pillar with 2 short blades drawn. A heavy canvas bundle hung across his back. More compact charges were strapped inside the cloak, enough demolition gear to bury the entire room. Cal grinned. The guild's little celebrity finally noticed me. I kept the shield raised. You followed me through 6 floors wearing a cloak. Cal's smile tightened. You followed me through 6 floors wearing a cloak, I told him. That is a crush with equipment. One of the golems turned toward Cal's voice. He vanished again before its fist landed. The blow shattered the pillar beside him. Cal reappeared behind me and cut across my upper arm. Warrior's instinct, the locust title gave you a danger skill. He had learned by watching. The skill's limit remained mine. Cal glanced toward the sealed door. Your route was easy to predict. I followed you from the guild. Red Fang watched your apartment after the locust stunt, so we knew who needed the elixir. So that was his leak. The gang had turned my rescue fame and my family address into targeting information. Every reward kept sending me an invoice. The nearest golem opened its chest and fired a stone spear. Cal vanished. I blocked, but the spear drove the shield into my ribs and pushed me toward the gravity panel. I changed direction before touching it. Cal noticed. His eyes followed my feet for half a second. He had seen the danger too. That meant I could not simply shove him onto it. I needed him angry enough to stop watching the floor. I slashed at his chest. His body folded into a shadow and appeared 3 steps away. The movement skill left an illusion behind, so Bee Sting locked onto the wrong target and buried itself in stone. Cal laughed. Your perfect little tricks only work when you can touch me. Then he attacked for real. His speed was higher than mine. One blade carried poison, the other carried paralysis. He cut my thigh again, kicked the shield aside, and drove a boot into my ribs. I hit the floor. A golem's foot came down where my head had been. I rolled, but Cal's wire wrapped around my ankle and pulled me back. The stomp landed across my metal boot. The armor held. My ankle did not enjoy the conversation. I cut the wire and forced myself upright. Cal's paralysis blade scraped my gauntlet and left blue numbness in 2 fingers. He saw my grip weaken and committed both weapons to the next rush. I let the greatsword dip. He aimed for my throat. The shield rose from below and caught his wrists. I shoved him into the charging golem's path, but his illusion swapped places with a shadow at the last instant. The boss crushed the fake body. Cal reappeared behind me and drove his knee into my damaged side. He had a counter for every obvious move. so I stopped offering obvious moves. Cal moved through the two bosses like he owned them. His cloak kept their attention on me while he stabbed whenever I committed to a dodge. He had poison in my shoulder, blood running down my arm and a damaged leg under me. The bald stalker had stopped clowning around. Cal appeared on my left. "You ruined Red Fang over two worthless men. They ruined themselves. They paid us." "Then your refund policy is terrible," he slashed. I caught one blade on the shield, but the second entered my side below the breastplate. Pain took my breath. Cal leaned closer. "Your mother dies whether I kill you here or leave you crippled." That line made the next choice easy. Cal snapped his fingers, and the gas canister behind me burst fully open. Green vapor filled the lane between both bosses. He expected me to retreat through it. I threw a broken trap wire around the first golem's wrist and pulled. The boss swung through the cloud, scattered the gas, and struck Cal's last visible position. His cloak flashed as he dodged. One stone knuckle still clipped his shoulder. Cal hit the wall, looked at the bosses, and made the classic arrogant man decision. He blamed me instead of the two giant fists. He rushed harder. I smashed my forehead into his nose. Cal staggered. I swung the greatsword. He vanished before the edge reached him, but the attack forced him toward the center of the room. Then I retreated. Cal followed immediately. He thought the poison had broken my timing. He thought the damaged leg had made my path predictable. He was right about both. He was wrong about why I chose that path. When the second boss rose, the moving floor had exposed a dark circular panel near the rear wall. Broken stones that touched it flattened against the surface. A loose knife had struck the edge and dropped like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Warrior's instinct warned me away from the panel, so I memorized it. I limped across the room and let Cal close the distance. He cut my back. I dropped to one knee. Cal stepped behind me, both blades raised. "Luck runs out!" I looked over my shoulder. "Walk one more step and test that." Naturally, he did. Cal planted his boot inside the dark circle. The gravity trap activated. His knee slammed into the floor. Both blades tore from his hands and flattened beside him. The invisibility cloak failed as its fabric pinned itself to the stone. Cal tried to rise. The trap pulled harder. The failed cloak left Cal fully visible to both golems. They stopped chasing me! One boss turned its glowing core toward Cal. The other raised both fists. Cal's eyes widened. The first fist hit him and drove the air from his body. The second golem grabbed him from the gravity circle and slammed him into the wall. Cal had spent the entire fight treating two bosses like rented furniture. The furniture had filed a complaint. He tried to trigger stealth again. A stone hand closed around his cloak and smashed him across the floor. One slam! Then both golems struck together and buried him under broken stone. Cal stopped moving. I dragged myself upright and turned toward the bosses. My shoulder burned. My thigh barely held my weight. The cure was still inside this room. Then rubble shifted behind me. Cal's eyes opened. His hand reached beneath the torn cloak and closed around the demolition bundle. Cal Knox woke under two angry bosses and chose the least stable option available. He tore open the demolition bundle. Compact charges spilled across his chest and waist. He hooked them into the straps under his cloak, then dragged the larger canvas pack against his back. The system count flashed across my vision. 100 explosives. Cal's face was swollen from the boss beating. Blood covered one eye. He still managed to smile. "You want the cure?" Cal rasped. "Dig for it." I moved toward him. He pressed the trigger. The boss room disappeared in white fire. The floor split first. Then the walls folded inward. I raised the metal slime shield, but the blast lifted me, spun me through broken stone, and dropped me into darkness with both golems. I hid hard enough to lose sound. When my hearing returned, the hidden chamber was shaking around me. Both bosses had survived the fall. So had I. Barely. My left foot pointed the wrong direction. The right boot had collapsed around crushed bone. One arm refused to close, and every breath scraped against my ribs. Across the chamber, a golden chest sat on a raised platform. The golem stood between us. The sealed chamber had a low ceiling, two bosses within reach of every wall, and one untouched chest on a platform with no cover. Cal's explosion had found the treasure room. It had also dropped every surviving threat directly beside the treasure. One boss raised its foot. I tried to stand. My legs failed. The stomp hit behind me and shattered the floor. Stone fragments cut my back as I dragged myself forward. The second boss fired a blast across the chamber. I rolled behind fallen debris. The impact broke the cover and threw me another few feet. The chest was still 20 steps away. The ranged golem fired again. The beam carved a line across the floor and erased the rubble beside my hand. I changed direction. The charging golem adjusted and planted one foot on my broken boot. Metal bent around my ankle. I struck the toes with the greatsword. The blade chipped stone, but the boss barely moved. Its second foot lifted over my spine. I pulled free by leaving part of the ruined boot trapped beneath it. The movement dragged my broken foot across the floor. My vision went white. The chest was 10 steps away, then 8, Then the ranged boss locked onto me again. I threw the shield behind my body. The blast hit metal and shoved me onto the platform instead of through the wall. The shield rolled away. The chest remained. I could crawl, so I crawled. The first boss advanced with slow, crushing steps. The second tracked me from the far side, waiting for the rubble to clear. My hands slipped on dust and blood. My ruined boots dragged behind me. Each movement sent pain through both legs. I thought about Mom breathing easier after the first potion. I thought about Mia asking whether I could survive floor 20. I had promised to retreat. There was nowhere left to retreat to. A stone foot rose above me. I pulled myself onto the platform and struck the chest with my gauntlet. The lid opened. A silver bracelet lay inside. Teleport bracelet acquired. Class and mana compatibility, low. Activation success rate, 15%. The foot started down. I fastened the bracelet and chose the space behind the boss. The chamber vanished. I appeared beside the golem's exposed back as its foot crushed the empty platform. 15% had become enough. The bracelet's energy indicator dropped sharply. Every jump would cost me. I could not waste one. I drove the greatsword into the seam beside the boss's core. The blade cracked one plate. The second golem fired. I jumped again, chose the wrong distance, and took the blast across my shoulder. The bracelet solved movement. It did not solve bad decisions. I landed on my ruined feet and nearly blacked out. Both bosses turned. One charged in fixed lines. The other fired after locking onto my position. Their patterns assumed the target stayed where physics placed him. I tested a shorter jump beneath the ranged boss's arm. It cost less energy. That gave me the rule I needed. Short jumps avoided counters. Long jumps redirected full attacks. I proved it with the next exchange. A short jump carried me past one fist, and I opened the plate under the ranged boss's arm. When the charging golem crossed the chamber, I spent a longer jump and appeared behind its partner. The shoulder strike meant for me broke 2 stone plates instead. The ranged boss spun and punched backward. I jumped onto the charging boss's shoulder, and the fist landed beneath my boots. Another core plate cracked. The bracelet dimmed with every move, but the bosses had started paying my damage bill for me. The charging golem lowered its shoulder. I appeared behind its partner, and the impact cracked plates across both bodies. A second short jump put me on the attacker's shoulder while the ranged boss punched the core plate beneath me. The bracelet's silver light thinned. The bosses were doing more damage to each other than I could afford to do myself. Then the charging golem learned. It ripped slabs from the floor and threw them toward my previous landing points. I shortened the next jump, appeared inside its reach, and let one slab smash into the ranged boss's cracked chest. The next slab arrived before I finished turning. I teleported only a few feet and felt the stone pass close enough to tear my sleeve. The boss had stopped chasing my body. It was chasing my habits, so I broke the habit. I chose the worst-looking space between both golems and stayed there until they committed. One fist came high, the other came low. I vanished at the last possible second and let both attacks meet. I cut through the last plate. The golem backhanded me before I could escape, and the bracelet lost another strip of light. One clean hit would end the fight before the elixir dropped. Both attacked. I vanished. Their fists collided. The first core split open. The second boss staggered, but its chest plate still held. I fired Bee Sting at the exposed core of the first golem. The skill curved around its raised arm and entered the crack. The core shattered. One boss fell. The system tried to open a reward screen. I ignored it. The remaining golem charged through its partner's body and caught me before I could choose another destination. Its hand closed around my torso. The bracelet flickered. The energy was almost gone. I activated it anyway. For 1 second, nothing happened. The golem tightened its grip. Then, luck answered. I teleported above its shoulder with the greatsword already raised. The boss looked up. Too late! Great layering strike! Success! The stacked force drove through its final plate and split the core beneath it. The golem collapsed. 2 bodies hit the floor. 2 golden bottles appeared between them. Legendary elixirs. I grabbed the first bottle and drank. Warmth moved through my body. Bones reset. Torn muscle closed. My feet straightened inside the ruined boots, and the pain vanished so quickly my body forgot how to brace for it. System notices stacked above the chamber. Double boss, clear. New titles. Permanent stat increases. I let them pass. The second elixir was still on the floor. I picked it up with both hands and stored it separately from every other item. One bottle had saved me. The other belonged to Mom. With my legs restored, I climbed through the collapsed floor into the ruined boss room. Cal was gone. I searched the rubble once. Cal's body was absent. So were his badge and every other clear trace. Only his blood-stained invisibility cloak lay beneath a broken pillar. The cloak proved he had been there. His fate stayed unresolved. I took it because leaving Red Fang equipment behind felt irresponsible. Also, invisibility is useful. I had learned to respect loot produced by terrible decisions. That evening, I reached the Adventurers Guild with the cloak and the boss clear record. The receptionist saw the blood and called senior staff. They checked the floor log, then checked it again. I had cleared 2 floor 20 bosses in record time. The lobby turned toward me when the result appeared on the main board. The main board added a second notice beneath my record. Red Fang involvement. Missing suspect. Active caution. Adventurers who had crowded close for the record stepped back when they saw Cal's name. Fame had made me interesting. The blood-stained cloak made me dangerous to stand near. A senior guild clerk examined the cloak's torn clasp. His face changed when he found Red Fang markings under the blood. "Where is Cal Knox?" the clerk asked. "I found the cloak." "That was not my question. It is the only answer I have." The clerk stopped pressing. The missing body had changed a victory into an active warning. Reporters crowded the entrance before I finished giving Cal's cloak to the guild. One reporter shoved a recorder toward my face. "Evan Hale, how does it feel to set a floor 20 speed record?" I walked around him. He followed. "Was the second boss planned?" "No." "What will you do with the reward?" "My mother is waiting." That ended the interview. The record could wait on the board. The elixir could not wait in my inventory. I reached the city hospital before visiting hours ended. Mia was already beside Mom's bed. Linda looked tired again, and the old tightness had returned to her breathing. Mia stood when she saw my ruined boots. "Evan, what happened?" "I placed the golden bottle on the tray. I found the drop!" Mia stopped looking at the boots. Mom stared at the bottle. "You reached floor 20? I reached the part under floor 22. Mia opened her mouth. "Later," I told her. "There were no jokes after that." Mom drank the elixir. The gold liquid vanished, and the room filled with soft system light. Her breathing steadied first. The gray color left her face. The tremor in her hands stopped. Linda sat upright without help. Mia covered her mouth. Mom swung her feet over the side of the bed and stood. The doctor entered, checked the monitor, and ordered one scan. He returned with the result in his hand and stared at Mom before speaking. "The illness is gone. That was all I needed from him." Mom took one careful step away from the bed, then another. Mia held both arms out, ready to catch her. Mom waved her off and crossed the room by herself. She reached the window, opened the blinds, and stood in the afternoon light without coughing. Mia broke first. She pressed her face into Mom's shoulder and cried hard enough to shake both of them. I stayed beside them until Mom pulled me in too. Mia hugged Mom from one side. I held both of them from the other. For 70 years, I had carried the memory of losing this room. Now Mom was standing inside it. She touched my face. "You look exhausted." "I had a long morning." Mia laughed through tears. Mom laughed with her. I did too. Mom was finally safe. We had one perfect minute before the room stopped. The next second, every clock in the hospital room froze. The heart monitor stopped mid-beep. Linda and Mia became motionless beside me. Even Mia's tears hung against her cheek. I could still move. A man in white and gold armor stood beside my sister with one hand raised over her heart. I knew his face from every guild broadcast. Damien Ward was humanity's top-ranked hero. He had entered my mother's hospital room to kill Mia. I caught his wrist before the strike landed. Damien looked at my hand, then at my face. "You can move inside the void barrier." The barrier had frozen everyone except us. That was the rule I understood from the room around me. Damien pulled free and struck again. I raised the metal slime shield between his fist and Mia. The impact threw me across the room, but the shield held. I landed beside Mom's bed and stood immediately. "Step away from my sister." Damien glanced at the frozen family. "You crossed death and returned." That was how he recognized me. Only someone whose soul had already passed through death could move in his frozen world. Damien lowered his hand by 1 inch. I regressed too. The strongest adventurer alive had just admitted he remembered the ruined future. Then he pointed at Mia. "In my first timeline, your sister married a man who later helped destroy the world," Damien told me. Their marriage collapsed. He turned that loss into hatred, and millions died after he acted on it. That was Damien's theory. He spoke like it was a sentence already approved. Mia could not hear him. She stood frozen between Mom and me while the perfect hero reduced her life to a risk factor. "You came here to murder her over a marriage that has not happened." Damien's expression stayed calm. "I came to remove a known cause. The cause has already changed." I pointed at Mom. "In your timeline, Mia worked nights to pay hospital bills. That was how she met the man you are afraid of. Mom is cured now. Mia has no reason to take that job." Damien looked at Linda standing beside the bed. His reply came 1 beat late. I pressed harder. "You remember one timeline? I changed the path before the meeting." "You changed one condition," Damien replied. "You have not proved the outcome. Neither have you." His eyes hardened. There it was. The perfect hero did not enjoy having his apocalypse math returned unfinished. Damien opened the hospital window. The frozen city waited outside under the void barrier. 10 minutes, he told me. Survive until the barrier ends and Mia lives for now. I tightened my grip on the shield. And if I refuse? I kill her before time resumes. He froze our happiest moment, tried to crush Mia's heart, then turned her life into a timed exam. I had heard enough. I accepted. The fight moved outside because I needed distance from my family. Damien followed me onto the hospital street, and the barrier expanded around frozen traffic and pedestrians. He was level 50. His stats sat near 3,000. My stats were nowhere close. Damien lifted one hand. Silent wind launched me through a parked car. Ice spears followed from 6 directions while fire spirits dropped from above. I raised the shield, and the metal slime trait saved my body while the impacts dragged me across the street. 3 Damien copies closed at once. One caught my sword arm. Another hammered the shield. The real hero kicked me through the gap before I found him. Fire spirits chased from above while stone spikes broke the street below. I blocked high and the real Damien struck low. I guarded the ground and silent wind hit from behind. He changed pressure faster than I could clear it. I crushed one clone with the shield edge. Light scattered across the pavement. Damien replaced it before my swing finished, then sent the new copy around a parked car to attack from my blind side. He did not give me breathing room. He manufactured more opponents whenever I earned one. I broke a clone with the shield edge. Damien replaced it immediately. Stone spikes rose under my feet, fire scorched my back, and ice locked one boot to the road. I tore free and left part of the soul behind. 2 minutes had passed. Damien had barely moved. My shoulder burned. One boot was half frozen, and the back of my armor smoked where a fire spirit had landed. Damien stood in the center of the street with clean gloves and enough power left to repeat the entire beating. Look, luck had carried me through terrible odds. Damien was raw power with a public relations department. I triggered the teleport bracelet, appeared behind him, and shield bashed his back. Damien moved half a step. A perfect surprise attack had bought me half a step. Great! He turned and punched the shield hard enough to crack the road beneath my boots. The bracelet dimmed. Floor 20 had nearly drained it, and Damien had already adjusted to my first jump. His eyes followed the silver band. That artifact rejects your class, Damien told me. It has poor judgment. You activated it repeatedly at 15%. His gaze moved from the bracelet to my armor, greatsword, and shield. Public reports had shown him the impossible results. The duel showed him the pattern. Your regression reward is luck, Damien said. I kept quiet. Mine was the void barrier, Damien continued. The compensation left my luck near 0. Then the strongest man alive dismissed luck as a rookie advantage and filled the street with elemental light. Beautiful. He had just admitted his one terrible stat. I blocked one blast, teleported past another, and still took a stone spike through the armor gap at my side. The hit tore flesh and dropped me to one knee. Damien approached without hurry. 4 minutes remained. A direct fight was impossible. So I changed the fight. I moved toward the frozen civilians at the intersection. Damien's next fire attack vanished before release. He could kill me with wide magic. He could not use it beside people who would resume moving when the barrier ended. The hero's public image was real. He genuinely protected civilians. That principle made him better than Cal. It also made him usable. Damien tried a narrow lightning strike. I reflected part of it with the shield, and the current jumped toward a frozen traffic light. He redirected the bolt before it touched the metal. That tiny correction cost him another second. I moved closer to the crosswalk. A frozen child stood beside an overturned bicycle. Damien's clones stopped using cutting attacks there. Damien sent clones instead. I ran between frozen cars and forced each copy to attack through narrow angles. He shattered one vehicle trying to catch me, then repaired its position with wind before the barrier could end. That cost him seconds. I crossed toward a construction trench. Damien cut me off with a wall of ice. I struck the support beside it. Loose steel fell toward 3 frozen workers. Damien abandoned the attack and caught the frame. I hit him with the shield. He absorbed the blow and threw me into a bus stop. Using civilians as cover? Damien snapped. Using the hero as a hero. His expression turned ugly. Perfect. He had finally stopped pretending this was a calm moral discussion. 7 minutes had passed. Damien attacked faster. At 8 minutes, Damien trapped me between 2 frozen taxis. One clone held the shield while the real hero formed a spear of compressed air. I kicked open a taxi door. The metal blocked the first thrust and tore free from its hinges. I threw it toward a frozen pedestrian. Damien destroyed his own clone to catch the door. That was the opening I needed to reach the utility pole. Damien followed immediately. Wind pinned my feet and a spirit blade cut across my shoulder. I used the final bright pulse from the teleport bracelet to escape beside a utility pole. The pole carried power lines above a gas repair trench. Frozen vehicles filled both sides of the street. One bad break could create a city block disaster when time resumed. Damien saw me look upward. Do not! I kicked the base. The weakened pole leaned toward the road. Damien caught it before it crushed a frozen family inside a car. The pole's weight meant nothing to him. His luck handled the rest. The snapped lines whipped across the trench and tore open a gas pipe. Sparks ignited the leak. Fire rolled under 2 cars. The road collapsed around a delivery truck, and a bus started tipping toward the hole. One kick had created 4 emergencies. Damien swore and split his magic between them. Wind held the bus upright, ice sealed the gas line, stone lifted the truck. One clone carried the family from the first car. The 4 rescues split all of Damien's attention. That left his back to me. I ran behind him and drove the metal slime shield into his back. Damien fell through an open maintenance shaft. The shaft connected to a sewage channel below the street. A dark splash came back up. Silence. Then Damien's voice rose from the hole. "You threw me into sewage. The city did most of the work." He jumped for the rim. I slammed the shield across his fingers and forced him back down. Damien tried the other side. I blocked it. He could blast me out of the way, but the fire, bus, truck, and gas lines still needed his magic. The cleanest man in Chicago stood waist-deep in sewage while holding an entire intersection together. His zero-luck build had reached full maturity, 9 minutes and 50 seconds. Damien looked at the frozen civilians, then at me above the shaft. "I surrender. Say Mia lives." "Mia lives," Damien answered. "For now." Remove the last 2 words. His jaw tightened. The barrier clock reached 10 minutes. "Mia lives," Damien repeated. Time resumed. The fire vanished under Damien's ice. The bus settled safely. The road held. Civilians moved without knowing how close the intersection had come to collapsing. Damien climbed from the shaft, soaked, furious, and annoyingly dignified. He looked at me like he had discovered a new disease. A frozen passerby resumed walking beside him and immediately recoiled from the smell. She covered her nose and hurried across the street. Damien watched her leave. A smile escaped before I could stop it. "You proved altered conditions can produce an unexpected path," Damien told me. "I will observe you." That sounds like stalking with better branding. I want a clean rematch. You can have one after Mia is permanently off your target list. Damien wiped sewage from one gauntlet and looked back at the hospital. "She remains alive while your path continues to reduce the larger risk." The promise was ugly and conditional. I had still forced it from the strongest man in the world. Then Damien's expression changed. He looked below the hospital. "A curse disaster is beginning in the morgue," he told me. "If you leave now, it reaches the patients upstairs." I stared at him. "You knew that before our duel?" "I knew the timing. I did not know whether you were worth involving." The audacity almost restarted the fight. Damien stepped backward as the void barrier faded from the street. "Save them, Evan, or the casualties begin tonight." Then the perfect hero left me beside a broken road and returned to whatever apocalypse problem ranked above ours. He had spared my sister. Then he pointed me at a hospital basement full of corpses and left. Minutes after Damien left me with the hospital morgue warning, I went back upstairs, smiled at my newly healed mother, and lied about dinner. Linda and Mia were still celebrating in the hospital room. They had missed the frozen duel, the broken street, and the hero marinating in sewage. Honestly, that was probably healthier for everyone. I picked up Mom's coat. "I'm cooking tonight." Mia narrowed her eyes. "I survived floor 20. That did not answer the cooking question. Mom laughed and let me guide her toward the door. "We'll take the risk." The risk downstairs was worse. I watched them enter a cab, waited until it turned the corner, then returned through the hospital lobby. 5 minutes had passed since Damien's warning. The morgue sat beneath the oldest wing. A security door blocked the basement stairs, and one exhausted guard was checking staff badges. I stepped into a restroom, pulled Cal's damaged invisibility cloak over my armor, and disappeared. The cloak hid my body. Moving doors could still betray me. When I opened the restroom door, a passing nurse saw the handle move by itself. She froze, crossed herself, and chose a different hallway. Great! I had become the hospital ghost before reaching the dead people. I slipped past the guard and descended. The basement morgue was cold, windowless, and far too quiet. Metal drawers lined one wall. Covered bodies rested on tables beneath weak ceiling lights. Warrior's instinct pulsed the moment I crossed the threshold. One red warning appeared over the nearest corpse, then another. Then every body in the room registered as a threat. The skill detected danger. It could not explain the rule, the curse, or why dead patients had suddenly entered combat range. So I tested the obvious part. I removed the cloak. The nearest corpse sat upright, its eyes opened cloudy white. Another body rolled from a table. 3 metal drawers slammed outward at once. The dead had been waiting for a living target. One zombie lunged. I cut through its neck and kicked the body away. A second grabbed my shield. A third crawled under the table and reached for my ankle. I crushed its wrist, drove the shield edge through its skull, and turned before the first body hit the floor. More drawers opened. The curse spread through the room faster than I could clear it. A corpse in a hospital gown grabbed my sword arm. Another caught the cloak hanging from my shoulder and ripped the damaged clasp open. I shield bashed the first into a drawer, then drove the second beneath a table with one kick. 3 more climbed over them. I used the narrow corridor to stop their numbers from surrounding me. One swing took the front legs. The shield caught the next bite. Bee sting curved past 2 bodies and pinned the third to the wall through its shoulder. The pinned zombie kept pulling. That confirmed another ugly rule. Pain did not slow them. Only destroyed movement or a ruined head mattered. I cut the head, retrieved the projectile, and moved before the next drawer opened. I dragged 2 rolling beds across the main corridor, ripped their boards free, and jammed them between the walls. The barricade would not hold forever. It only needed to keep the dead away from the elevators. The first wave struck the boards. Wood bowed inward. I stabbed through the gap, dropped 2 zombies, and shoved the pile back with the shield. Then warrior's instinct warned me from an inner storage room. 2 human shapes stood behind the door. One registered as hostile. The other did not. I kicked the door open. A male corpse turned toward me and charged. I removed its head before it crossed the room. The second figure looked dead too. She was an adult woman in hospital clothes, sitting against a cabinet with gray skin and blood around her mouth. Her hand shook, but warrior's instinct stayed quiet. She was alive. Then I saw the bite on her forearm. The woman lifted a metal tray like a weapon. "Stay back." Her voice was weak, but the tray stayed pointed at me. "Good," I told her. "Keep doing that. It means you're still you." She looked past me toward the barricade. "Those things bit me 10 minutes ago." The boards cracked in the hallway. A fresh bite gave me a short window. Public Undead Guide said, holy water could slow spirit curses. A world tree leaf could purge deeper contamination. I had neither in my inventory. The teleport bracelet still held 1 weak pulse after Damien's duel. 1 trip. No guaranteed return. I handed the woman my spare knife. If that door opens, stab anything except me. She tightened her grip. "Where are you going?" "To buy the most irresponsible medical kit in Chicago." I triggered the bracelet and chose the hospital chapel supply room I had passed upstairs. The jump worked. I appeared between stacked boxes and nearly collapsed when the bracelet went dark. 1 pulse had emptied it. I grabbed holy water, a sealed world tree leaf from an emergency curse kit, and a portable alchemy case with its manual clipped inside. Then I ran back through the stairs because teleportation had officially clocked out. The guard saw me returning with church supplies and raised 1 hand. "Basement is restricted." Something slammed against the door below hard enough to shake dust from the frame. I pushed past him. "It is also occupied." The second impact convinced the guard. He backed away from the stairwell and locked the upper door behind me. I reached the inner room as the barricade broke. The woman had used the tray, the knife, and 1 rolling stool to keep a zombie outside. She also had a box of matches clutched against her chest. "Found these in the cabinet," she gasped. "Useful? Keep them." She had no idea those cheap matches were about to become more valuable than my S-rank sword. I opened the alchemy case on the floor. The rule was simple. Holy water weakened the spirit curse. The leaf carried purification. Her blood told the mixture what body to save. I took 1 drop from the bite, added the 2 ingredients, and started the furnace. Evil purging elixir crafting started. Excellent quality chance, 1%. The hallway filled with scraping bodies. The woman watched the furnace. 1%? For me, that's basically a reservation. A zombie forced 1 arm through the damaged door. I cut it off, kicked the door shut, and returned to the furnace before the mixture cooled. The result formed in a glass vial. Excellent evil purging elixir created. I pressed it into her hand. "Drink!" She swallowed. Black veins had already spread from the bite toward her shoulder. They stopped! Then they withdrew. Her skin regained color, and the trembling left her fingers. She took 1 clean breath. The survivor was breathing. Then every corpse outside screamed at once. Saving her had cost time. The curse used it. Bodies slammed together in the corridor. Arms twisted around torsos. Ribs locked across shoulders. Heads pushed through the growing mass as the remaining zombies fused into 1 giant shape. The abomination hit the broken barricade and launched both beds across the room. 1 frame smashed into the wall above us. I raised the shield and took the second frame across my back. The woman rolled behind the cabinet before the impact reached her. The monster crawled through the doorway on too many limbs. I cut off 3 heads. They regrew. The severed head slid back into the body. The mass swallowed another corpse from the floor and became larger. I fired bee sting through the center skull. The shot pierced deep, but 2 more faces opened around the wound. My sword could destroy pieces. The curse kept replacing them. The abomination struck the ceiling. Concrete cracked above the morgue. Pipes burst. Water sprayed across the hallway. Wildfire magic might erase the monster. It would also burn through the hospital above us. Waiting for Damien meant letting it reach doctors and patients first. I needed repeated damage across the entire body, fast enough to beat regeneration, tight enough to stay inside the basement. The monster swept 1 thick arm through the room. I ducked and pulled the woman behind an overturned table. She shoved the matchbox into my hand. "You asked if they were useful." I looked at the matches, the broken bed frames, the splintered boards, and the portable furnace. Cheap metal, wood, powder, trash materials. My specialty. I opened the alchemy manual and asked the hospital's AI for 2 short-range weapons with wide, continuous fire. A corpse mountain punched through the wall while the assistant displayed a safety warning. I genuinely respected the commitment to policy. A tentacle ripped the phone away. I caught it, entered the crude design, and fed the furnace bed frame metal, barricade wood, and powder from the matches. The survivor held the overturned table against another tentacle while I tore brackets from the broken bed. The furnace swallowed cheap steel, splintered wood, and the match powder. Every ingredient looked like trash. That was exactly why the design had a chance to become interesting. Unsupported design, class compatibility, extremely low, excellent quality chance, 0.01%. The abomination charged. I had one hand on the furnace and one on the shield. A tentacle wrapped around my ankle and dragged me across the wet floor. The woman struck it with the metal tray. The tray bent. The tentacle loosened just enough for me to cut free. Her bent tray bought the second I needed. I hit confirm. The furnace flashed. 2 compact shotguns dropped into my hands. Excellent quality. The monster opened 6 mouths. I fired both barrels. The blast removed every head across its front. New ones began growing. I fired again before they finished. The first recoil nearly dislocated both shoulders. Excellent quality, still kicked like a mule. I adjusted my stance, braced one stock against the shield, and fired in alternating bursts. One weapon reloaded through the system while the other kept pressure on the monster. The dual shotguns spread damage across the entire mass. Every pole destroyed several growth points at once. The monster tried consuming the corpses around it, so I shot those too. It rushed. I stepped forward. One blast removed its left side, the next tore through the center. I kept firing until regeneration fell behind destruction. It tried changing tactics. Tentacles spread across the ceiling and dropped behind me, cutting off the stairs. 2 mouths opened near the floor and spat black fluid toward the survivor. I crossed the line, caught the spray on my shield, and fired through both mouths at point-blank range. The monster recoiled. That was its first backward step. The abomination struck once more. I ducked under the arm and emptied both weapons into the core buried beneath its ribs. The first core cracked. A smaller knot of cursed flesh tried crawling toward the drainage channel. I stepped on it and fired one final round downward. The curse mass burst apart and stayed apart. For once, the dead followed instructions. World first curse abomination clear confirmed. Title acquired, Holy Vanquisher. The shotguns cooled in my hands. The woman lowered the tray she was still holding and laughed once from pure exhaustion. Above us, the locked security door exploded inward. Armored church fighters poured down the stairs, white cloaks, silver weapons. Holy seals already glowing. Their arrival came after the fight, which was useful because I had no patience left for reinforcements with timing issues. I pulled Cal's cloak over myself and stepped away from the surviving woman. The church soldiers surrounded the ruined morgue, the purified survivor, and the pile of remains. Then someone outside the basement saw through the cloak. A young cleric's voice carried from the stairwell. "Stay where you are!" The church fighters turned toward the empty space beside the wall. The cleric descended while staring directly at me. "Your karma is wrong," she said. "Are you an enemy of God?" Seconds later, the young cleric entered the morgue on a polished palanquin while checking her phone. 4 St. Aurelia church attendants carried her over the broken stairs. White robes marked her as a senior cleric, and silver light burned across her eyes when she looked through Cal's invisibility cloak. Her name was Serena Vale. She had arrived to contain the curse event. She also looked mildly annoyed that the event had already been contained without her. Serena lowered her phone. "Remove the cloak!" I did. The church fighters raised their weapons. Serena stayed seated while everyone else prepared for a fight. One attendant offered her a small bag of crackers. She took it without looking away from me. That was my first clear read on Serena. She could detect invisible threats, command armed paladins, and snack during an interrogation. Holy authority had become weirdly efficient. Serena's glowing eyes of judgment moved over my armor, the dual shotguns, and the ruined abomination. "Your karma value is abnormally low." "That sounds healthy." "It is not." "Then your marketing needs work." Serena did not smile. One attendant behind her did and immediately pretended to cough. The bitten woman stepped between us. "He saved me." Serena looked at the healed bite, then at the excellent elixir bottle on the floor. Suspicion stayed on her face, but the survivor's body had become evidence Serena could not dismiss. She lifted one hand and sent a purification wave across the room. Holy light passed through me. It burned the curse residue from my cloak and left my skin alone. Serena's eyes narrowed. "You are not cursed." "Excellent. Can I go cook dinner now?" Damien's voice answered from the stairwell. "Not yet." Damien Ward descended in clean replacement armor. Humanity's top-ranked hero had apparently found time to remove the sewage. Tragic. I had hoped the smell would survive longer. Serena stepped down from the palanquin. "Hero Ward, you know him?" Damien looked at the pulverized monster. "Evan Hale cleared the morgue." Serena pointed toward the shotguns. "With those, I had limited options." Damien examined the damage. "That is his preferred condition." We had known each other for less than an hour, and the perfect hero already sounded tired of me. Progress. Serena's eyes of judgment brightened again. His karma remains unusually low. Damien's expression stayed flat. Your metric is unreliable around regressors and system errors. Serena looked from him to me. Regressors? Damien ignored the question. Evan will join the holy campaign. I turned toward him. I will, what? Damien's word lowered the church fighters' weapons. Serena kept watching me. The campaign reclaims the class change temple on floor 30, Damien told me. Without it, most adventurers cannot advance into stronger classes. The temple's altar unlocked advanced classes. Without it, adventurers hit a ceiling while deeper monsters kept growing. I knew the other reason. The campaign had failed in my first life, and its collapse had weakened humanity before the apocalypse. Damien looked toward the ruined stairwell. I have other disasters to stop. Stay with Serena. I remember this campaign failing, but I never learned the cause. I looked at him. Mia stays off your target list. Damien's jaw tightened. The agreement remains. Say it clearly. Serena watched the top hero receive terms from the man holding homemade shotguns in a destroyed morgue. Her phone screen went dark from neglect. That might have been the first miracle of the night. Damien met my eyes. Mia remains safe while this path continues. Ugly wording. Still a spoken limit. I accepted the campaign because the church could teleport a force directly to floor 30. Deed floor access, class progression, and Damien's failed timeline warning all mattered. Serena raised one finger. I have not accepted you. Damien just assigned me. Damien does that when he wants other people to become responsible for his decisions. I looked at him. Damien looked away. Beautiful. The phone cleric had landed her first clean hit. That evening, Serena took me to the nearest St. Aurelia chapel. She walked now, though 2 attendants followed with the empty palanquin and enough snacks to survive a siege. Serena ate crackers while explaining my test. One fight, she told me. Defeat our level 40 paladin and I will approve you. I was far below level 40. The test paladin waited in the chapel yard wearing full silver armor. His shield covered most of his body. His mace looked built for people with stronger health insurance. Serena finished one cracker and touched his shoulder. Holy light wrapped around him, his armor hardened, his speed rose, his shield gained a glowing barrier. I looked at Serena. You buff the examiner? Serena opened another snack packet. The dungeon will not protect your feelings, neither will your snack budget. She finally smiled. Barely, the paladin charged. I started with the obvious answer. Great layering strike activated on my first swing and hit his shield with enough force to crack the yard. The blessed barrier held. He pushed through my strongest clean attack and drove the shield into my chest. His first shield strike launched me across the yard. I caught the ground with one gauntlet and stopped before hitting the chapel wall. The level gap was real. He moved faster than his armor should allow. Serena's buff erased the one weakness I expected to exploit. The paladin swung his mace. I blocked with the metal slime shield, but the impact numbed my entire arm. He pressed forward. I tried the chaos staff. The random spell produced a wind blade strong enough to move his cloak and nothing else. Serena took another cracker from the packet. Your legendary luck seems tired, Serena observed. It has standards. The paladin heard us and attacked harder, offended that his test had become background conversation. One strike hit high. Another hammered my ribs. The third forced me backward over the same patch of stone. Serena watched while chewing. The attendants watched Serena. Apparently the senior cleric eating during attempted homicide was normal here. I fired bee sting at the paladin's shoulder. The glowing barrier turned it aside. He laughed inside the helmet. A lower-level projectile will not break blessed armor. Then he raised the mace again. One screw beneath his right arm shifted. The armor plate had loosened from repeated swings. Serena's buff strengthened the metal. It had not tightened the hardware. The paladin rushed for another shield bash. I kicked a broken metal chip from the yard into the air and targeted the loose screw with bee sting. The projectile curved around his shield. It entered the gap. The screw snapped. His shoulder plate fell inward and jammed the arm holding the mace. The next step twisted his chest plate sideways. One loose connection dragged 3 linked pieces out of alignment. The paladin stopped charging. He tried to tear the jammed plate free. The movement exposed a second linkage along his ribs. I targeted that seam with the greatsword's flat side and drove the damaged armor deeper into itself. The paladin lost his balance. I did not. I slammed the metal slime shield into his exposed side. The armor burst apart across the yard. He rolled twice, landed flat on his back, and lost the mace. The glowing barrier vanished. I planted one boot on his shield before he could rise. The paladin stared at Serena. My armor failed! Your maintenance failed, I told him. The armor was loyal. Serena stopped chewing. The attendants looked at the scattered plates, then at the tiny screw embedded in the wall. The paladin had entered as a level 40 wall. He left the ground wearing half a breastplate and a deeply personal grudge against hardware. Serena closed the snack packet. Approved. Such emotion. You destroyed church property. He brought it at me. Serena glanced at the paladin. He did. An attendant opened the chapel door for me. Behind us, the test paladin stayed on the ground, staring at the loose screw embedded in the wall like it had betrayed his bloodline. Serena stepped close enough for the eyes of judgment to scan my chest again. Your karma still makes no sense. Put it on the campaign's list of problems. I already did. She walked through the open door and pointed to the place beside her. You're assigned to the adventurer contingent. Senior paladins want outsiders kept away from the temple, so stay where I can see you. Suspicion with access. I will take it. I left before anyone could convert that warning into a meeting. Before midnight, I reached our apartment because I had promised dinner. Mom and Mia sat at the table waiting. I had defeated a curse abomination, argued with a cleric, and dismantled a level 40 paladin through one screw. Then I burned the chicken. Mia cut into the black edge. Floor 20 was easier? Considerably. Mia watched me cut the chicken and pointed at the raw center of one piece. You burned the outside and missed the inside. That requires balance. That requires surrender. Mom took one bite and reached for water. I stood to remove the plate. Mom pulled it back. You cooked, she said. We eat together. Mia scraped off the darkest part and pushed the rest toward me. You eat the evidence. Fair. We sat together in the apartment I had once lost for 70 years. Mom was healthy. Mia was safe tonight. The food was fighting back, but nobody had died. That warm little disaster lasted until Serena called. Her voice had lost the snack cleric calm. The senior paladins are pressuring me to remove adventurers from the temple assault, Serena told me. They say our karma will strengthen whatever is inside. The campaign that failed in my first life had already started repeating its first mistake. 3 days before the Holy Campaign, Serena admitted the paladin captain wanted every adventurer excluded. We met at St. Aurelia Church because her phone call had turned my burnt dinner into a warning. Serena stood beneath a stained glass window with her arms folded. She had left the palanquin and snacks somewhere else. That alone told me the pressure was real. The captain showed the senior clerics our karma readings, Serena told me. He claims outsiders will empower the temple's enemy. Damien already called that metric unreliable. They think Damien is protecting you. He threw me into a campaign after trying to kill my sister. Very protective. Serena winced. You make every explanation worse. I work with the material provided. She looked toward the closed council door. They also said adventurers carry greed, violence, and criminal histories. That was rich coming from people planning to use us as hired muscle until the dangerous part began. I told Serena one fact from my first life. This campaign fails. Her eyes moved back to me. I never learned the exact mechanism, I added. I only know the church force entered the temple and did not reclaim it. Serena's expression tightened. Then help me prevent that. I will, even if your captain pays me to leave. He did exactly that. On campaign day, St. Aurelia Church assembled paladins, clerics, attendants, and a hired adventurer contingent in the main sanctuary. Damien's endorsement made me captain of the adventurers. Several fighters from the Locust Rescue had answered the contract. The blonde warrior who once threw me a rope stood at my right side. He had already learned that my plans worked best when nobody asked whether they were sane. He tapped the silver captain badge the church had given me. They put you in charge again. Temporary complication. The female mage from the cavern adjusted her staff. Last time you said that, he fell off a mountain. The nearby adventurers took one careful step away from me. Excellent leadership atmosphere. Before the portal opened, the paladin captain inspected our line. His gaze stopped on the repaired cavern armor worn by several former captives. You will follow church commands without improvisation, he told me. The blonde warrior coughed into one fist. The female mage stared at the ceiling. They had both survived my previous improvisation. The captain had just asked the least suitable group in Chicago to behave normally. Of course, I told him. Serena looked at me. She knew that tone already. The church opened a floor portal. One flash carried the combined force from Chicago to floor 30. We arrived beneath an eternal black sky. The class change temple stood across a dead plain, its white towers dark and its front gates sealed. That temple controlled advanced class changes. Reclaiming it meant stronger paths for thousands of adventurers. Losing it again meant humanity stayed weaker. We crossed the dead plain in a tight formation. Winged monsters circled beyond the temple but did not attack. That bothered me more than an ambush. The closer we moved, the quieter floor 30 became. Warrior's instinct gave small warnings from the temple, then stopped whenever we paused. Something inside was aware of movement. The paladin captain waited until we reached the gate. He wore polished gold-trimmed armor and the expression of a man who had never been forced to carry his own equipment. He handed me a payment case. Your contingent has fulfilled its escort duty, the captain announced. Full compensation is inside. You may return. The blonde warrior opened the case and whistled. Every adventurer had been paid as though we completed the whole campaign. For 1 second, even I respected how much money they had spent on the insult. Then the captain pointed away from the temple. Your karma would feed the entity inside, he continued. The church will handle the sacred battle. The female mage stared at him. You hired us to cross floor 30, then decided our souls become dirty at the door? The captain's mouth tightened. Take the money and be grateful. There it was. The purity captain had finally said the rude part aloud. I looked at Serena. She stood among the clerics behind him. Her jaw was tight, but the senior paladins had already boxed her into their formation. I handed the payment case to the blonde warrior. Split it evenly. The captain relaxed, assuming I had accepted dismissal. I sat on a broken stone outside the gate. His relief died. You were ordered to leave, the captain told me. You paid me to stop helping. Yes. I stopped. The adventurers sat down around me. The blonde warrior placed the case in the center. We got full pay. Best rejection I've had all year. The female mage leaned against her staff. 5 minutes before they ask us back. The paladin captain glared. You will not be needed. He took the church force inside. The gate sealed behind them. I stayed because I remembered the failed campaign. I did not know what waited inside. I knew leaving Serena there would repeat the result Damien feared. As the gate sealed, Serena looked back once through the shrinking gap. I tapped 2 fingers against my captain badge. She saw it and gave one small nod. For several minutes, the temple remained quiet. Then warrior's instinct began pulsing through the stone. The first warning was low enough to ignore. The next one made weaker adventurers stand. A scream reached us through the sealed gate. Metal struck stone inside. A roar shook dust from the temple roof, and black gas leaked through a crack above the doors. The female mage pressed one palm to the gate. Magic pressure is rising. A thin vapor touched her glove. She jerked away, and the gas followed her hand before sinking back through the crack. Whatever lived inside had started reaching for people outside. Then the shouting changed. You took the offerings, one paladin accused through the stone. Another voice screamed back, my rank gave me that right. The black gas thickened after each accusation. Warrior's instinct hit harder with it. The church had entered preaching purity and was now feeding something with every ugly truth it threw at itself. A body slammed against the gate. A gauntleted hand forced through a narrow split near the floor. Blood covered the fingers. The wounded paladin clawed at the stone and shouted, Open it! The monsters are stronger now! Someone deeper inside yelled Serena's name. The paladin captain barked for the clerics to hold formation. A heartbeat later, his own fist joined the pounding on the gate. Open the doors! He screamed. A cleric shouted that the wounded needed healing. Someone answered that Serena was still at the altar. The captain ordered them to bring her, then screamed again when a monster struck the gate from inside. Metal scraped across stone. The wounded hand at the crack disappeared. For 1 second, the opening showed a terrified eye behind a bent helmet. Black gas streamed across his face, and he shoved another paladin away from the only gap. Open the doors! The captain screamed. Another body hit from behind him. The crack widened, and black vapor poured around the wounded hand. We still could not see the whole battle. We did not need a report to understand the church was collapsing. Afterward, Serena and the survivors filled in the hidden trigger. Several monster species had been kneeling around a statue. The paladins mistook worship for weakness and charged first. Their attack released the black gas. The gas fed on fear, guilt, corruption, and death. Once it reflected their sins back at them, the paladins accused one another instead of fighting. Every excuse thickened the vapor. Every death strengthened the monsters. Look, I cannot improve that level of self-sabotage. The Purity faction had found an enemy powered by hypocrisy and immediately started confessing at combat volume. Buffed monsters broke the shield lines. The captain ordered everyone to protect the clerics, then ran for the gate when a demon wolf reached him. Senior fighters followed. Most of them left Serena near the altar because she still believed holding the line was her duty. Outside, the result kept hitting the doors. A second wounded paladin reached the crack and shoved the first man's arm aside. Move! It is behind us! The 2 men fought each other for space while black gas wrapped around their armor. Behind them, someone screamed Serena's name again. A heavy impact drove both men against the doors. The first paladin begged the captain to lift the seal. The captain shouted that the seal had locked after their charge and blamed the clerics for failing to control it. His accusation drew another ribbon of gas through the crack. The female mage watched the vapor curl toward his voice. It reacts when they turn on each other. The blonde warrior raised his shield. Then that room is full of fuel. Warrior's instinct flashed so hard that red warnings overlapped across the entire temple. The blonde warrior looked at me. You knew this would fail. I knew the result. Now we know where the screams are. The female mage lifted her staff. The contract ended. I stood on the payment case. The adventurers looked toward me. The church could not issue another order through the gate. The guild was 30 floors away. Nobody was coming to give us permission. Serena is still inside, I told them. The paladins who insulted us are trapped with her. I am going in. The blonde warrior tightened both shield straps. This is outside the contract, I continued. Keep the money. Anyone who leaves owes me nothing. Warrior's instinct projected one massive threat beyond the gate. Black gas crawled toward the return portal, then recoiled from its light. The escape route still worked, for now. One fighter checked the rune. Can it take us home? The blonde warrior tested the edge with his boot. Yes. A man pulled a folded drawing from inside his gauntlet. 2 children had covered it in crooked stars. He removed his church charm and placed it on the payment case. I have kids, he told me. Go. He stepped through the portal. Another fighter followed, then another. Nobody mocked them. They had accepted an escort job. The church had fired them before the evil god part. One departing adventurer stopped beside me. If you return, I owe you a drink. If I do not, buy yourself 2. He left without pretending courage he did not have. The people who stayed pulled their straps tight and closed ranks. The blonde warrior took my left side without being asked. The female mage checked her mana behind us. Former captives lifted the same rare equipment I had once handed them inside the cavern. One shield user moved to cover the return portal until the last departing fighter vanished. Then he turned around and joined us. An archer counted the remaining arrows aloud. A wounded veteran tightened a bandage with his teeth and stepped into the rear line. Nobody gave a speech. The portal light behind us stayed open. The gate ahead kept screaming. Every person in the smaller formation could still see both choices. The blonde warrior counted the volunteers. Small team. Better, I told him. Less arguing over premium armor. The female mage tapped her staff against my shield. You assigned me the staff. And you are still complaining. Perfect continuity. The next scream cut through the joke. A crack split down the center of the temple gate. Light spilled through it. 2 armored figures shoved from inside, clawing over each other and screaming for help. The gate began to open. The church had locked us outside. Its deserters were about to drag us back in. The temple gate opened, and 2 paladins burst through it like their faith had just received an eviction notice. One saw our volunteer line and shouted, "Move! That thing is killing everyone!" I moved. Forward! My shield hit the first paladin in the chest and launched him backward through the gate. I hooked the second behind the knee and kicked him after his friend. Both men landed inside the temple they had abandoned. Then I stepped through and asked, "Do you need adventurer help now?" The gate groaned behind us. Our smaller volunteer team entered before it could close again. Inside, the screams finally made sense. Black gas covered the floor. Mixed packs of demon wolves, horned beasts, and winged monsters surrounded the central statue. The evil god inside that statue fed on fear, guilt, and death. Every frightened paladin made it stronger. Serena Vale, St. Aurelia's young phone cleric, stood near the altar with 3 exhausted clerics. Her white robes were torn at one shoulder. Her staff shook in both hands. A demon wolf was already leaping for her throat. I fired Beast Sting. The projectile curved between 2 paladins, entered the wolf's eye, and knocked it sideways before its claws reached Serena. I crossed the distance and split its neck with the metal slime greatsword. Serena looked at me, then at the adventurers pouring through the gate. "You came back," she breathed. "We never entered," I told her. "Your captain fired us outside." The blonde warrior planted his shield beside mine. "Full pay too. Very generous disaster." Serena almost laughed. Then the black gas surged. A wounded paladin pointed at our formation. "Get them out! Their karma will feed it!" The purity captain staggered from behind a broken pillar. His polished armor was cracked, and one gold shoulder plate hung by a strap. He saw me standing beside Serena and found enough energy to become annoying again. "You brought criminals into a sacred temple," the captain snapped. "Some of these adventurers have theft, violence, and dungeon charges in their records." Several volunteers stiffened. The female mage lowered her staff by 1 inch. She had survived traffickers, locusts, and a collapsing mountain, yet the accusations still hit, the captain noticed. Naturally, he kept digging. "These people are stained," he told Serena. "Their presence will doom us." I pointed at the black gas pouring from the statue. "Your pure fighters attacked worshippers, accused each other, abandoned their cleric, and tried to escape." The captain opened his mouth. I stepped closer. "The adventurers admitted they were scared before entering. Your people lied until the god could smell it." The room heard that one. A surviving paladin looked at the gate. Another lowered the sword he had aimed at the volunteers. The captain's face twisted. "They chose their pasts." "So did you," I told him. "You chose to run 5 minutes ago." The paladins nearest him lowered their weapons and stopped waiting for orders. The first paladin I had kicked back inside tried to crawl toward the gate again. The blonde warrior placed one boot on his cape. "Stay," he told him. "We just arrived." Beautiful. The rejected help had started supervising management. The evil god answered the captain's humiliation with another wave of monsters. 3 demon wolves rushed our left side. Winged creatures dropped from the ceiling. A horned brute charged the clerics near Serena. The volunteers moved before I finished shouting. One church archer hesitated beside them. He kept glancing at the black gas around the volunteers, waiting for the evil god to grow stronger. Nothing happened. The gas ignored the adventurers and swarmed toward the purity captain instead. He was shaking harder than anyone in the room. The archer watched that proof land. Then he stepped behind our line and aimed where the female mage pointed. The blonde warrior locked shields with two former captives. The first wolf hit their wall and stopped cold. The female mage fired lightning over their shoulders. Her spell jumped through the wet black gas and stunned all three wolves at once. I used the opening. One horizontal swing removed the front monster. A shield user crushed the second against a pillar. The third tried to retreat, so Beasting bent around the formation and dropped it behind the line. The winged monsters descended next. A paladin raised his sword and missed the first one. The female mage grabbed his shoulder. Stop swinging upward, hold the lane. He looked offended. Then a winged beast merely took his head. The paladin copied her stance. Our archers fired from behind him. Two monsters fell. A chaos staff rolled an advanced lightning spell and dropped 4 more across the altar steps. The staff cracked in my hand. I tossed it aside and drew another. The paladin beside me stared. How many of those do you have? Enough to keep disrespecting probability. The horned brute reached Serena's clerics. I charged, caught its axe on the metal slang shield, and let the impact drive me backward 1 step. The brute expected a weak rookie behind expensive armor. That same mistake had already killed every monster that tried it. I pushed the axe aside and drove Great Layering Strike into its ribs. Great Layering Strike, success! The brute crossed the floor and broke the base of a pillar. Serena raised her staff. Golden light wrapped around the wounded clerics and closed their deepest cuts. Her knees buckled after the spell. I caught her elbow before she fell. Serena pulled free and looked toward the statue. Healing them feeds my fear. Fear feeds that thing. The evil god's stone face had opened its eyes. Black gas gathered around the statue like muscle. Every frightened breath made the pressure heavier. I could kill the monsters around it. The god kept replacing their strength. The blonde warrior shouted from the shield line, "We can hold the room! We cannot win the room!" That was the problem. We needed the statue. A broken path led from our formation to the altar. Demon wolves filled it. Paladins lay wounded between them. The closer anyone moved toward the statue, the thicker the gas became. Serena stared at the altar and tightened both hands around her staff. "I have one spell that can reach it," she told me. Her voice had changed. I did not like the change. "What does it cost?" Serena kept her eyes on the statue. "Everything I have." The nearest cleric grabbed her sleeve. "Lady Serena, that right consumes the caster." There it was. The church had abandoned her, the evil god had cornered her, and Serena's answer was to make her own death useful. I stepped in front of her. "Find another spell." "There is no time. We just bought time." Serena pointed at the shield line. One volunteer had lost his helmet. Another carried a bleeding paladin behind cover. The female mage's lightning had weakened to sparks. "We bought minutes," Serena replied. "I can trade 1 life for everyone here." "No." Serena finally looked at me. "Evan, I am the cleric responsible for this campaign. You were the cleric they left behind. That changes nothing. It changes who gets to order your funeral." The statue roared. Black force struck the formation. 3 shield users went down. The blonde warrior stayed upright only because 2 adventurers caught his back. The purity captain crawled behind our line and yelled, "Use the sacrifice, that is what clerics are for." Serena heard him. So did every adventurer who had entered to save her. The female mage turned and blasted the floor beside his hand. "Say that again," she warned. He did not. The volunteers had spent years being called criminals, failures, and disposable labor. The captain had just demanded, "Serena become disposable too." After that, nobody obeyed the captain. A shamed adventurer who had stayed near the rear stepped forward first. He carried an old robbery conviction and a borrowed spear. "I will open the path," he told Serena. "You decide what you do after we reach it." The blonde warrior raised his shield beside him. "Same." The female mage lifted her staff. "Same." One by one, the volunteers closed around Serena. Then the remaining paladins copied them. The church fighters who had once ordered us outside now formed behind the adventurer shields. They followed our spacing, our calls, and our retreat signals. Before this room, they called us impure. Now they watched our backs because their own formation had died. I pointed toward the statue. "One push," I told them. "No speeches. Break the monsters, carry the wounded, and do not feed that ugly rock another panic attack." The blonde warrior struck his shield with his sword. The volunteer line moved. The first demon wolf hit us and died on 3 spear points. The second jumped over the shields, so I cut it from below. The female mage fired lightning into the winged monsters circling the altar. A paladin copied her timing and released holy fire after the lightning stunned them. The combined blast cleared the ceiling. We advanced 6 steps. A wounded church swordsman tried to pass our front line. The blonde warrior blocked him with one shield edge. "Hold formation," he ordered. The paladin stared at him. "You cannot command me." A winged monster dropped behind the paladin and hooked both claws into his cape. The blonde warrior turned, smashed the creature into the wall, and pulled the paladin back by his collar. "You can complain after surviving." The paladin moved where he was told. That tiny surrender spread through the room. Church fighters stopped waiting for the purity captain. They watched the adventurers who were actually keeping people alive. Every rescue pulled another church fighter into our formation. Then the evil god slammed black force across the room. Our front line bent. A volunteer's borrowed shield split down the center. Black force threw him into the altar rail and dislocated his shoulder. Serena started toward him, but 3 demon wolves filled the gap he had left. The wounded man kicked his broken shield under the first wolf's legs. The beast tripped, and the paladin behind him finished it. The volunteer stayed on the floor and used his good arm to push another shield forward. "Keep moving," he shouted. "Our rescue force paid for every step." The adventurer with the old robbery charge took the next hit on his shield and lost his footing. The paladin behind him caught his armor before he fell. Nobody commented on the criminal saving the holy man. They were too busy moving. We advanced 5 more steps. A horned brute tore through the right side. I blocked its axe, but a second monster struck my back. The metal slime armor reduced the blow. My knees still hit stone. The brute raised its axe again. Serena fired a narrow beam through its chest. The spell saved me and drained the last color from her face. I rose, killed the second monster, and pulled her forward. "You still have enough power for your spell?" Serena nodded once. "Too quickly." That meant yes, because the spell would consume whatever she had left. We reached the altar steps. Behind us, 2 volunteers could no longer stand. One paladin had lost his sword arm beneath shattered armor. The female mage leaned on her staff because her legs had started shaking. Nobody had died during our push, but the next wave would change that. The blonde warrior turned his shield sideways and blocked the stair behind us. "Make this count." I was planning to waste it for dramatic tension. He did not laugh. "Fair." Nobody had enough breath left. The evil god statue towered above us. Its stone mouth opened, and the black gas formed hands around the nearest fighters. Adventurers hacked through them. Paladins dragged wounded volunteers behind the steps. The blonde warrior held the center while the female mage burned her final mana, keeping the winged monsters away. Serena climbed toward the statue. I stayed at her side. She planted her staff into the altar and began the sacrificial incantation. White lines spread from the staff across her hands. Then they climbed her wrists. The cleric beside us screamed, "Stop! The rite is taking her life!" Serena kept speaking. The statue fought the spell by flooding her with black gas. Images moved across the surface around her feet, fallen paladins, shattered church symbols, hands reaching from darkness. I could not see what Serena saw inside them. I could see her pupils widen and her breathing turn shallow. The white lines reached her elbows. Her breathing shortened. The light around her body grew stronger while her legs weakened. The sacrifice was working! That was the worst part! The evil god recoiled. Black gas pulled away from the altar. The monsters around us slowed. Serena had found a way to win. It would kill her before the final word. I reached for the staff. Serena knocked my hand away. "Do not interrupt me." Her voice cracked. The final line of the incantation waited. Serena opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Her hands started shaking. The white lines stopped moving. The evil god leaned closer. Serena tried again. Her lips formed the first word, but her body refused the rest. She had faced monsters, church pressure, and public responsibility without blinking. Now death had reached the part nobody could perform through. Her staff slipped. The sacrificial light broke. The evil god's arm tore free from the statue and swung toward her. I stepped between them. The stone hand hit my shield. The impact drove both knees into the altar and cracked the metal around my arm. My shoulder screamed. The shield held. Serena fell behind me. I kept the god's hand away from her face and spoke without looking back. "You are scared!" Serena's breath broke. "I failed!" "No. You became honest." The god pressed harder. The altar cracked beneath my boots. I forced the shield upward 1 inch. "Fear is normal," I told her. "Dying because those cowards expected it is stupid." Serena looked at the abandoned paladins, the wounded adventurers, and the people still holding the monsters away from us. Her hands closed around the staff again. I pushed the stone arm aside and turned toward her. "Stop trying to die," I said. "You are a cleric." Serena stared at me. Then I pointed at the altar. "Pray." Serena stopped trying to die. She knelt at the class change temple altar and prayed. Serena knelt at the altar and prayed with the breath she had left while the evil god tried to crush us. For one breath, nothing happened. The statue's hand rose again. Then gold light burst from the altar. It passed through my shield, wrapped around Serena, and struck the evil god across the face. The statue's open mouth sealed shut. Black gas stopped pouring from it. Every monster in the temple staggered. The pressure vanished from my chest so suddenly I nearly fell forward. Serena looked up at the light. It answered. Good, I told her. Keep asking. She almost smiled. The evil god pulled against the seal. Cracks spread through the gold light immediately. Prayer had suppressed it. Prayer had not killed it. The altar beneath Serena activated for the first time since the campaign began. A system panel opened in front of me. Class change altar available. Battlefield ownership. Contested. Ritual success rate. Extremely low. The temple normally required a secured altar, a cleric's prayer, and several uninterrupted minutes. We had one of those three. The evil god was already breaking the seal. The monsters were recovering. Serena's hands shook from exhaustion. So I placed my palm on the altar. The purity captain saw the panel and crawled closer. You cannot perform a class change during battle. I looked at him. You also could not lose a holy campaign to your own personality. He stopped helping. The altar flashed. Forced class change requested. Success chance. Below standard display range. Perfect. My entire second life had been built below standard display range. The ritual started. The evil god felt the altar move. Its sealed mouth bulged against Serena's prayer, while black hands erupted from the floor around me. I could not leave the circle without canceling the class change. The volunteers had to protect a man standing still in the middle of the worst room in Chicago dungeon. The blonde warrior planted himself at the foot of the altar. How long? The system did not include customer support. A demon wolf jumped over him. The female mage caught it with a weak lightning chain, but the spell only slowed it. One of the remaining paladins stepped between the wolf and my ritual circle. The creature tore through his shoulder plate. He stayed upright and drove his sword under its jaw. That paladin had called the adventurers dirty outside. Now he was bleeding to protect their captain. Another black hand reached for Serena's throat. She held the prayer with one hand and smashed the staff head through the fingers with the other. Choose faster, Serena snapped. I am waiting for the terrible option. Light wrapped around my armor. Two class choices appeared clearly enough to understand. The first was Paladin. Heavy defense, holy attacks, church approval, a respectable path with stable power and almost no probability mechanics. Serena saw the option and nodded quickly. Paladin fits your shield and holy vanquisher. The nearby church fighters agreed. Of course they did. Paladin was clean, famous, and safe. Then the second option appeared. Jester. The least respected combat class in the system. Its skills gambled with damage, stats, effects, and timing. Normal jesters could become incredible for one attack and useless for the next hour. A wounded paladin actually laughed. You forced the altar for that? The purity captain found his voice again. Jester is a failure class. I stared at the probability descriptions. Every skill depended on chance. My luck was 9,999. Look, I had spent 70 years being the weakest serious adventurer alive. The system finally offered me a class everyone treated like a joke. That class was basically custom made. I selected Jester. The laughter stopped. Serena blinked at me. You rejected Paladin. I noticed. For Jester, I also noticed that. The blonde warrior shouted from below the altar. Is this another temporary complication? The class is permanent. He hit a monster with his shield. That is worse. The altar accepted my choice. For one ugly second, the contested ritual flickered. The class panel blurred, and the circle beneath my boots went dark. The purity captain laughed from behind his pillar. It failed. Serena drove her staff into the altar and forced more prayer through it. Gold light hit the circle again. My luck check resolved. Class change, successful. Class acquired, Jester. New energy moved through every old skill. The system took the luck stat that had controlled drops, critical hits, crafting, and artifacts, then connected it directly to my class. The change was visible immediately. Silver symbols spun around the greatsword, shield, chaos staffs, and every probability-based skill in my panel. None of the symbols promised stable power. Every one offered a better result or a much uglier failure. The wounded paladin who had laughed looked at the symbols and stopped smiling. Serena read the same panel through the altar light. Your class turns every probability check into a combat resource. That is the nicest way anyone has described my gambling problem. The evil god struck the seal again. Gold light cracked above Serena's head. The force knocked two volunteers down the altar steps. One paladin reached for them instead of retreating, and the blonde warrior covered all three with his shield. Our mixed formation held, but only barely. The class change had given me the correct weapon. The team still had to buy me one clean swing. One new skill appeared first. Fortune's Gambit. 50% next attack multiplied by 10. 50% all stats reduced to 1/10 for 1 hour. The downside would leave me weaker than the rookie who first entered floor 1. The upside could end the fight. The evil god tore one side of its mouth free from Serena's seal. Black gas leaked through the crack. The monsters below recovered their speed. A winged beast knocked one volunteer from the altar steps. The blonde warrior caught him, but their shield line lost ground. Serena's prayer grew louder. The gold seal tightened again. She looked at my new class panel. You have one attack before it breaks. One is enough. The purity captain dragged himself behind a pillar. If the gamble fails, everyone dies. I glanced at him. You already tried the safe plan. That one hurt more than his injuries. I stepped down from the altar. The evil god ripped both arms free from the statue. Stone fingers tore through the gold seal and reached toward Serena. I moved between them again. My new Jester class unlocked probability links across skills I already owned. Great Layering Strike still needed its activation check. Holy Vanquisher amplified damage against curses and undead. Serena's support, magic could raise the strike higher. Fortune's Gambit would decide whether the entire stack became ridiculous or suicidal. Holy Vanquisher lit along the blade. Great Layering Strike waited behind it. Serena held the final buff ready. Now they needed to land together. Serena, I called. She kept praying. What? Buff everything. Her eyes widened. That is not a technical instruction. It is the correct amount. The phone cleric lifted one hand from the staff. Gold light struck my armor. Strength rose. Speed rose. Holy damage wrapped around the greatsword. Serena's prayer weakened for half a second, and the evil god used it. One stone arm hit my shield and tore it from my grip. The shield crossed the temple and buried itself in a wall. The second arm caught my side. Metal slime armor reduced the impact, but I still crashed across the altar steps. My ribs bent. Blood filled my mouth. The Jester class had not made me durable enough to ignore a god. The evil god turned toward Serena. I forced myself upright. The blonde warrior tried to intercept. A demon wolf knocked him down. The female mage's staff produced one weak spark and died in her hands. Our volunteers had reached the end of their resources. The paladins were following them now, but too many were wounded. Serena's prayer was the only thing keeping the statue from flooding the temple again. One attack, one roll. I activated Fortune's Gambit. The skill immediately pulled every eye in the room toward me. Even the evil god paused. A class mocked for unreliable spectacle had just placed the entire campaign on one visible coin flip. The blonde warrior shouted, "Which side do we want? The one where I stay useful. Helpful." The female mage threw her broken staff into a demon wolf's face. "Just hit the god!" A silver coin appeared above my hand. One side carried a laughing mask, the other carried a broken crown. The coin spun. The evil god raised both arms over Serena. I launched myself from the steps before the result appeared. The coin stopped. Laughing mask. Fortune's Gambit. 10 times outcome. Naturally, I tightened both hands around the greatsword. Great Layering Strike. Success. Holy Vanquisher ignited along the blade. Serena's buff compressed around the edge. Jester multiplied the entire attack by 10. The evil god looked down at me. The purity captain had called the class useless. The paladins had laughed. The system had built a joke around bad odds. Bad odds were my employees now. I swung. The blade struck the statue's chest. For one silent second, nothing moved. Then a crack split from the altar to the evil god's face. Gold light exploded through the fracture. The statue shattered in one strike. Serena's prayer snapped outward with the impact. The gold seal became a wave that passed through every living fighter without harming them. Wounds stopped bleeding. Exhausted knees held for one more breath. The people who had carried the push felt the victory before the system announced it. The shockwave crossed the entire sanctuary. Broken armor lifted from the floor. The purity captain's remaining shoulder plate clanged beside the payment case. He stared at it and stopped pretending he still commanded the room. Nobody picked it up. Stone arms broke apart above Serena. The sealed mouth split into dust. The black gas caught fire inside the divine light and vanished across the temple. Every buffed monster collapsed. The demon wolves lost their black armor. Winged creatures dropped from the ceiling. Horned beasts shrank beneath the volunteers' weapons. The blonde warrior looked at the empty space where the evil god had stood. Then he looked at me. A jester! A very lucky jester. He lowered his shield. I hate that this makes sense. Serena said nothing. The snack saint who had questioned my cooking, my karma, and every questionable plan just stared at the broken statue with her mouth open. I pointed at her. "You're doing the shocked crowd thing!" Serena closed her mouth. Then sunlight broke through the temple roof. Floor 30 had been trapped under eternal night. The darkness split above the towers, and real daylight poured into the sanctuary. The remaining monsters fled from it. One demon wolf tried to hide behind the purity captain. He shoved it away with his boot, then froze when the creature turned on him. The adventurer with the robbery conviction stepped between them and killed it with the borrowed spear. The captain could not thank him. He could barely meet his eyes. He lifted one hand as if to issue an order. Nobody looked his way, so he lowered it. Adventurers and paladins finished the monsters blocking the exits. Without the black gas, they were ordinary targets again. System notices filled the air. Evil god defeated. Title acquired, Evil God Slayer, Holy Vanquisher upgraded, class, change, temple restored to human control. The altar stabilized beneath Serena. Across Chicago Dungeon, advanced class access returned. Beside me, Serena was still alive because she had prayed instead of dying for people who ran away. Serena looked at her hands. The white sacrifice lines had faded. You were right, she told me. About Jester, do not ruin this. Then be specific. Serena pressed both hands over her face for 1 second, exhausted and annoyed. Good. Annoyed people were usually alive. Below the altar, the volunteers began carrying wounded fighters toward the gate. Some of the wounded were adventurers. Most were paladins who had insulted them outside. The volunteers carried them anyway. The purity captain sat against a pillar while the female mage treated his arm. He could not look at her. Before he found a speech, the temple gate opened again. Guild reinforcements entered with the adventurers who had left through the return portal. They arrived after the battle was over, exactly when help was safe enough to become popular. The fighters who had left honestly came carrying medical supplies and stretchers. Behind them marched several restrained paladin deserters captured near the portal route. The first two were the same men I had kicked back through the gate. One saw the broken statue, then saw me holding the Jester class panel. His face went through fear, confusion, and regret in under 2 seconds. New personal record. Serena descended the altar steps and stopped in front of the restrained deserters. The church fighters waited for her judgment. The volunteers waited too. Serena faced the deserters. You abandoned the wounded and left the altar. You will answer for both. Then Serena looked past the restraints at adventurers lifting wounded paladins from the floor. Her expression changed. The temple had been reclaimed. St. Aurelia Church had lost something else. Serena was done pretending the institution deserved her more than the people who came back. Serena Vale resigned the morning after the temple battle. The decision started the previous evening, outside the shattered altar. The rejected adventurers carried wounded paladins toward the portal. The blonde warrior held one end of a stretcher. The adventurer with the old robbery charge held the other. On the stretcher lay the purity captain. His polished armor had been stripped down to keep pressure off his injuries. The gold plates he loved were stacked in a box behind him. Meanwhile, the paladins who abandoned Serena stood restrained near the gate. One deserter tried to explain that he had only followed the captain. The female mage pointed at the volunteer carrying that same captain. He followed Evan into the temple. Pick a better excuse. The deserter stopped talking. Serena watched without touching her phone or snacks. The church had labeled those adventurers impure. They were now carrying church fighters home, while the pure deserters waited in restraints. Nobody needed a doctrine lecture after that. Serena walked to the restrained paladins and removed the command seals from their armor. The seals hit the stone one by one. One seal rolled to the blonde warrior's boot. He nudged it back toward the deserters without bending down. None of them reached for it. You left wounded fighters behind, fled the altar, and abandoned me, Serena told them. The first deserter lowered his head. Serena pointed toward the guild officers who had arrived with reinforcements. You will answer for what you did. I will not protect your titles. Serena turned her back before anyone could turn the aftermath into a hearing. The command seals on the stone had said enough. Then she turned to the wounded volunteers. The blonde warrior shifted the stretcher higher. Are you coming through the portal? Serena looked back at the temple. For years, St. Aurelia Church had been her home, job, authority, and identity. Its paladins had trained her to judge people by numbers they barely understood. Then, the people with ugly numbers had returned for her. Serena crossed the portal with us. The next morning, she entered the church office wearing clean white robes and carrying her staff. I waited outside because she asked for privacy. The privacy lasted 4 minutes. A senior cleric's voice rose through the door. You cannot resign after a victory. The church needs your image. Serena opened the door from inside. She had already removed the silver cleric badge from her collar. The senior cleric stood behind a desk with 3 prepared documents. He had expected guilt, negotiation, and a smaller role. Serena placed the badge on top of the documents. You needed me before the campaign, she told him. You listened to the paladins instead. The cleric reached for the badge. We can review the captain's conduct. Serena pulled her hand away first. Review it without me. He changed tactics immediately. Where will you go? Serena looked through the open door at me. I straightened. The cleric followed her gaze and frowned. With the Jester? I raised one hand. God-slaying Jester. Serena closed her eyes for 1 tired second. The senior cleric stared at the broken Evil God Slayer title glowing beside my status panel. He closed his mouth. Serena walked out of the office. The badge remained on the documents. St. Aurelia had lost the cleric who saved its campaign because its leaders assumed she would always stay useful and obedient. Classic mistake. I followed Serena down the church steps. Do you have somewhere to live? The church residence remains available for 3 days. And after that? Serena unlocked her phone. I am working on it. She was absolutely not working on it. The screen showed a dungeon support article titled, How to Join an Existing Party Without Appearing Desperate. Serena covered the screen with her palm. I looked away politely, then I looked back because this was too good. You searched that? Your phone searched it while you were holding it? Serena increased her walking speed. Goodbye, Evan. She disappeared around the corner under a burst of speed. Magic! I assumed the conversation was over. That evening, Mia opened our apartment door and screamed. I ran from the kitchen with a half-burned pan in one hand. Serena stood inside the living room. The apartment door was still closing behind her. She had used a burst of speed, magic, to slip past Mia before anyone could decide whether she was invited. Her staff rested against our couch. 2 travel bags sat beside it. A box of church snacks occupied the best chair. Mia pointed at her. The holy girl teleported into our house. Speed magic, Serena corrected. Teleportation would be rude. I looked at the bags. This is your polite entrance? Serena lifted her chin. You need a support specialist. There it was. The authority who had tested me at church had arrived at my apartment to recruit herself. Mom came from the hallway and recognized Serena from the campaign reports. Linda Hale had recovered completely, but she still had the dangerous habit of welcoming anyone who looked tired. Sit down, Mom told her. Evan is burning dinner again. I am controlling heat distribution. Mia took the pan from my hand. He is losing to chicken. Serena looked at the black edge of the food. You defeated an evil god yesterday. Different resistance type. Mom laughed and carried Serena's snack box to the table. The room settled around her too easily. That made me suspicious. I pointed toward the travel bags. You resigned this morning. Yes. You invaded my apartment tonight. I entered quickly. You brought luggage. I plan efficiently. Mia leaned toward me. She is better at excuses than you. Tragic. My own sister changed teams in under a minute. Serena sat at the table but kept both hands around her phone. Without the cleric badge, she looked younger and less certain. In 3 days, the church residents would lock her out. Tonight, she still had no party or home. I placed a plate in front of her. The least burned pieces were hidden under sauce. Serena studied the meal. Is this a test? Level 40. She took one bite. Her eyes of judgment stayed quiet. Her face delivered a complete moral assessment. Mom pushed the breadbasket toward her. Ignore him. What did you want to ask? Serena set down the fork. I want to become Evan's dungeon partner. Mia stopped chewing. I waited for the rest. Serena continued. I can heal, purify curses, strengthen combat skills, detect karma, and support class change rituals. Evan fights alone even when his plans clearly require somebody to stop them. Mia nodded immediately. Approved! You do not have voting authority, I told her. Mom nodded too. Approved. I looked at Serena. You prepared this ambush. I learned from you. The answer was unfairly good. I still needed rules. You follow my retreat call, I told her. Sacrificial magic is banned. Keep eyes of judgment off my family, and keep church orders out of party advice. Serena answered each one without hesitation. Agreed, and insulting. Accurate? Serena looked away. Previously accurate? That was enough. I held out my hand. Serena reached for it. Then Mia slapped her palm on top of ours. Family vote. Mom added hers next. I stared at the pile of hands. 70 years alone had not prepared me for group decisions at my own dinner table. Fine, I said. You're in. Serena smiled. It was the first smile I had seen from her that did not belong to a church title or a successful spell. Then she ruined the moment by opening a support, magic panel. I should inspect the apartment for hazards. No. Serena cast a cleaning blessing anyway. Holy wind exploded through the living room. Dust vanished. Laundry folded itself. Every loose paper lifted into the air. Mia's school notes stacked by size. Mom's curtains tied themselves into perfect knots. My inventory receipts escaped an open drawer and circled the ceiling like terrified birds. One paper slapped Serena across the face. She caught it. It was the hospital bill for Mom's first treatment. The room went quiet. Serena lowered the spell immediately. Mom took the bill, folded it once, and placed it inside a cabinet. That one can stay, she said. The magic had cleaned the room. It had also dug up the life we were leaving behind. Serena bowed her head. I am sorry. Mom squeezed her shoulder. You helped him make sure we do not need another one? Then Mia pointed at the ceiling. My remaining receipts were still circling. Can your new partner turn those off? Serena snapped her fingers. The papers dropped directly onto my head. She had been on the team for 3 minutes and already weaponized support. Magic against me. Promising start. 1 week later, rare drops, boss records, and campaign rewards became a set of house keys in Mom's hands. The new house stood in a quiet Chicago neighborhood above the dungeon district. It had enough room for Mom to garden, enough security for Mia, and enough distance from the hospital to stop every window from looking like an old memory. Mom turned the key once and opened the front door. She did not cough. She stood in the doorway longer than anyone else. The old apartment had been chosen around hospital distance, cheap rent, and what Mia could reach between work shifts. This house had been chosen because Mom liked the sunlight. Linda pressed the key into her palm and looked at me. You did all this from dungeon drops? Mostly. Mia leaned around her shoulder. He also got punched through several walls. That was not part of the payment plan. Mom pulled me into a hug before I could dodge the emotional damage. Mia joined from the other side. Serena stood behind them holding boxes and looked suddenly unsure where to put herself. Mom reached one arm back and pulled her in too. Serena nearly dropped the emergency snacks. Mia ran inside and claimed the largest upstairs room before anyone could discuss fairness. Serena entered behind her carrying 2 boxes with a strengthening spell. I looked at the second box. Why are your snacks moving into my family's house? Serena did not slow down. Emergency supplies. For what emergency? Hunger, Mia shouted from upstairs. Her room is beside mine. I stopped in the doorway. She has a room? Mom handed me another key. You said she joined the party. Apparently, the party had housing benefits. I walked into the living room. Sunlight covered the floor. Mom stood beside a window planning where to put plants. Mia argued with Serena about closet space. Boxes filled the hallway. In my first life, I had watched our apartment empty after each loss. In my second, the new house was too loud before we finished moving in. That was better. Mom and Mia were safe in a house chosen for sunlight instead of hospital distance. Cal was missing, Damien was ahead, and the ruined future still carried more unanswered problems than I could count. So I called the people who had already chosen the dangerous direction with me. The blonde warrior answered first. The female mage answered second. Former captives and temple volunteers joined after them. Shield users held lanes. Mages controlled crowds. Archers covered movement. Serena kept everyone standing. They arrived at the guild carrying their own equipment this time. Nobody wore prison ropes. Nobody waited for me to hand them a weapon. The blonde warrior tapped my Jester badge. We are really following this class into floor 20? You followed me off a cliff before. You fell off the cliff. Temporary complication. The female mage groaned. He kept the line. Some traditions deserved protection. Our first permanent party run began on floor 20, the same floor that had nearly crushed my feet and killed Mom's last hope. Before entering, I placed one rule on the guild board under our party registration. Retreat call, Evan or Serena. No arguments inside combat. The blonde warrior read it twice. You gave someone authority to stop you. Do not make it emotional. Serena saved a photo of the rule. For evidence. I immediately regretted writing it in public. This time, we entered together. A puppet squad attacked in the first corridor. The blonde warrior blocked the front. The female mage stunned the center. Serena buffed my speed. I used beasting to pin the rear puppet before it completed an ambush. The entire fight ended before my old solo rhythm would have cleared the first target. One puppet had tried to circle behind Serena. Mia had made me promise to keep the cleric safe, so I turned to intercept. Serena had already purified the control mark and made the puppet collapse at her feet. She looked at me. I can protect myself. I was checking. You were hovering. The blonde warrior walked past us. He has 70 years of solo habits. This may take another 70. Serena looked at the broken puppets. Efficient. I looked at the untouched shield line and full mana bars. Suspiciously healthy. The blonde warrior pointed deeper into the floor. Try not to fix that. We kept moving. On the next chamber, a stone guardian raised both fists. Serena boosted my strength while the shield line trapped its legs. The female mage cracked the neck joint with lightning. I triggered Great Layering Strike. The guardian's head left its shoulders. No one needed a rope afterward. The team split the drops, but my luck still made the reward pile ridiculous. Rare weapons appeared for people who had once fought with equipment I loaned them. The female mage lifted an S-rank staff and stared at me. Do you understand how irritating your drop rate is? Deeply. Serena checked the item panel. This would take another party months. Then they should invite me. The blonde warrior picked up a new shield. We did. I had no joke for that. 70 years earlier, people had stepped over me on floor 1 while the world ended. Now experienced fighters waited for my call before entering the next room. At the end of that run, a guild board updated the top adventurer rankings. Damien Ward had reached level 70. His name stood far above mine. The hero had spent our temple campaign handling other disasters. While I became a jester, built a party, and moved my family into a new home, he had kept climbing too. Serena read the board over my shoulder. You are staring at his level. He tried to kill my sister. And you dropped him into sewage? That was one win. The blonde warrior joined us. You plan to surpass the strongest adventurer alive? I looked at Damien's name, then at my party reflected in the board glass. The Jester badge felt solid beneath my hand. Level 70 is a number, I told them. Numbers are where my problems usually start losing. Then we turned back toward the dungeon. The next floor was waiting, and this time I had people reckless enough to follow. I would surpass Damien, however long the climb tried to fight back. After that, we would deal with the ruined future waiting above us.